There we go. And hello, everyone.
Konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa. It is Saturday night, and that means it is time for the Weekly Dig. For anyone new to the stream, this is a live show where we dig into anime old and new. I am Brent. This is my incredible co-host, John. Say hi, John.
Hi, John. Hi, everyone.
Steve sadly cannot be with us tonight. He has other obligations, but he's with us in spirit, however that works. It is normally a thing we jump right into the dig. I thought we'd just kind of chat a little bit as I see folks in the chat talking a little bit. Hey Matt.
There's Matt.
Hey, Matt. Good to see you, Matt, in the chat. See, I rhymed.
Matt chat.
This is the content y'all come for.
Exactly.
You
come for the content, but you stay for Brent's cookies during OnCon.
This is true. Speaking of, this is the most absurdly adult life thing to be excited about. But I had a new oven installed today.
Oh, sweet! A Viking range?
No.
Dang.
I was not willing to spend the money on that. It's a GE, but it has a griddle in the center.
Yeah,
which is nice. It also has, and I did not realize this, a broiler drawer in the bottom.
Oh, so it's not just a warming drawer.
Yeah, and it literally says broil only on it. So you can just broil stuff right under there without using the main chamber, which is interesting. Haven't tried it yet. It literally
this is an electric range.
Gas.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I gas is in here.
Right.
That's a weird phrase to say. But, and I have not had a chance to, try it out yet. I had some friends over, and so it got installed at, noon. And they came over at, 12:30. Wow. So I was like, nah. But it is so nice not having a piece of junk oven. That, having that appliance, it's like, okay, it doesn't quite work great, but it's okay. You can get stuff done. And then it kind of becomes less and less okay. And then getting to that point where it's everything works. I don't have to think about anything. Everything is modern design. The knobs aren't 2 inches wide. They're nice and big, so I just nice, all those little things.
There's not bits and pieces of grease and stuff stuck behind the knobs where you just kind of can't get at them. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I've done my cleaning attempts on that and done. Is that thing we can only ever get it 80% clean. It's at best. But so that's that feels good. I'm looking forward to giving an inaugural bake sometime soon and put some bread in there or some cookies or something.
Yeah, as a brand new piece too, it should be pretty up on keeping temperature and hitting the right mark for temperature.
This and one of the things that I like, they now come with temperature adjustments. So you can essentially go in and say, and tell the oven that it is 10 degrees hotter than it thinks it is.
Oh, so you can hang your thermometer inside, gauge the temperature, and then fix it. Oh, that's hallelujah for that.
I know.
Man. Holy cow.
It's within 35 degrees plus or minus. You can adjust it. It's
wow, that eliminates all of parents and grandparents stuff. Be if you're cooking something in the oven, it's 3 degrees or 10 degrees, such and such direction. So adjust for that. Do what?
Yep.
Oh, sweet.
It also has a Sabbath mode.
Sabbath mode, so it doesn't eat meat? No, what?
If you are fully observant Jewish, you cannot work on Sundays, which means you cannot turn on an oven on Sundays.
Oh.
So it has a mode where you can set things up the day before, and it will switch on automatically and go through a whole mode. So you have not technically worked on a Sabbath.
That's awesome.
I gotta tell you, reading through the manual and seeing to set Sabbath mode, I'm like, are we in Evangelion now or something? What is Sabbath mode? This feels like
to set third impact angel mode.
Exactly.
Turn stove to 1 billion and then run.
Yeah.
That's really interesting because I've never seen that on any small appliance ever.
Mm-hmm. Nope.
toaster ovens, toasters, anything. You know what I mean? I've never seen that already.
Yeah.
That's an interesting
And
inclusion.
obviously ovens have like a preset, mode. So you can say, okay,
Right.
set a timer for this to turn on. This is apparently something more, advanced, more
Interesting.
calculated. So I was like, that's interesting. Apparently it's an important thing. Matt says, patch size mini oven, afraid to clean it because it might damage it. Yeah, that's the thing. One of the reasons I just talked about reading the manual is I realized reading the manual helps.
Yes, it
Yeah.
does.
Actually paying attention to what it says in the manual will actually, oh, this is how to clean the thing. I think that's nice to know.
Yeah. Yeah, I have one of those. Even though my oven's itself on the fritz, I have one of those giant locking bars that runs across underneath the control section where you lock it down for cleaning mode.
Oh, wow, okay.
For
Interesting.
the love of me, I have never, when it worked right, I never launched cleaning mode because I had no idea, what kind of violent hellstorm does that ignite inside the oven? And do I have to worry about burning the house down?
Yeah.
I'm like, step away from it. Locking bar's a neat feature. I am not using that.
Yeah. Yeah, I used that a couple of times on the old stove, and boy, does that get hot.
Yeah.
My
It
gosh.
carbonizes everything.
Yeah. And I would get a little worried. And they say, like, if there's anything around the oven, like, move it out of the way.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a good point, Have Major Eyes. Who needs an oven when you only eat cereal? I mean, that's a very simple approach to life. I endorse that. That makes
Well,
sense.
the roughage in
Foodie
cereal
Pebbles
is much better than that pork loin roast wrapped in bacon, soaking in butter.
Speaking of which, somebody at work was talking about a cake they had made. It was a cake. It was like a chocolate cake with white icing. I was like, oh, that looks good. And there's a topping. What is that? Cocoa Pebbles. I was like, ooh, yes. That is a whole idea. Like adding like sugary cereals as toppings on things. I'm like, the little gray cells are going like mad now. There's so many things I want to do now.
I swear years ago I saw something that was graham cracker crust is a thing. That's a thing, obviously.
Absolutely.
Oreo crust was a thing. I was
Sure.
like, oh, that's kind of funky. Okay. Somebody used Frosted Flakes.
Oh, interesting.
So they just bashed the living crap out of Frosted Flakes. And I have no idea how you hold it together unless you literally
I'm sure there's
melt
butter or
butter
something.
or something like that
Yeah.
to sort of make it be a thing. But and it was a pie crust. And I was just like, oh wow, just supercharge your sugar content. Wow.
I have a recipe for these bars that are basically like cornflakes and marshmallow.
It's sort of like a Rice Krispie treat.
Yeah,
sort of.
exactly.
Okay.
And they're delicious. Just the combination of the crunch and the soft and all that kind of stuff. Bless you.
Thank you. I wonder if you could use Frosted Flakes instead of cornflakes.
That's a good point. And maybe there was Frosted Flakes, now that I think about it. Because that would be sugary.
Oh, yeah.
All the sugar.
Again.
Yeah.
Woo.
That's, it's interesting you mentioned cornflakes. Because imagine, like a Cocoa Puff crust.
As long as you can bind it together.
Yeah.
That's your biggest enemy. Is like if you can't bind it, it just falls.
But you
apart,
think,
the whole thing.
you have ginger snap crusts. We just
Yeah.
crush up ginger snaps. You have, say, graham cracker crusts.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be anything preventing that. And a crust is really just a binder on something that is grain-based,
Yeah. Of course, you know what runs through my mind? Fruity Pebbles
Yeah.
with a key lime pie.
Oh,
Crust
dude!
with a key lime pie, so it's all fruit flavor. God, that would sound like it would be
Yes.
summer, ice cold in the summertime.
Yeah. Oh, man. You are... wrong season. It's a shame that we just... But
Hey, you can always experiment.
It's
There's
true.
no holding it back for experimentation.
Yeah.
But, oh boy.
Now that I think about it, yeah, no kidding. I'm wondering, what about golden graham crust? You know?
Golden grams with a sweet potato pie.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, or pumpkin pie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh. That
I may have
fall
to try
classic
that. Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And the nice thing about pumpkin pie is it's basically, 2 cans.
Yeah.
Right. From the grocery store. So it's easy
Well, I don't
enough to
think you
try
can
out.
eat 2 cans. I think they're endangered.
Well, clearly not, because they're making so much money off the cereal they endorse.
Exactly.
So
it saved all the toucans in the rainforest.
right.
Thank goodness.
Perfect. Yay.
Toucan Sam is safe.
Hey, Ginger. No, we to be very clear, we are crushing ginger crackers, not gingers.
No.
We like gingers. Gingers are good.
Yeah, exactly. This crust tastes kind of funny. It depends on the person. What? It's a ginger crust. Depends on the person.
Not good.
You know what we should have planned for Steve not being here, because it is the witching season, to have found a way to graphic in like a little floaty ghost with Steve's face on it, to be like, Steve's here in spirit. Too late for that.
Yeah.
Damn my feeble mind.
I'll see what the elves can whip up. I'll ask them for some information.
They're good at shoes, but who knows if they can make a floaty ghost?
Exactly. Also,
Hu Tao. If Hu Tao was here, she'd whip out a little.
I was wondering which elves you're talking about, right? Are we talking like,
Dark elves?
Well, or like Midsummer Night's Dreams elves, like the fair folk who will come and steal your children away elves, or like that kind of thing.
That is true too. When you see the Elven Queen riding on a horse and she takes you away to the Elven lands.
Have you read any Terry Pratchett Discworld
heck
novels? Yeah.
Oh heck yeah. Rincewind the Wizard.
There we
Two
go.
Flowers. The Sapient Pearwood Trunk.
He did one novel about the fair folk, Lords and Ladies. That's the one.
Okay, that one I did not read.
Yeah, and I mean he wrote dozens.
I was gonna say I read Hogfather. I watched the Hogfather film.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
We'll talk about that.
Mr. Tea Time? No, Tia Tommy.
Yes. And like that is the whole thing about Lords and Ladies is that people find out that like the elves are coming, and the main character is like, we have to make plans. And it was like, elves, they have dumb little bells on their boots, and they prance around like, no, these are like the elves of legend who will torture you to death because it's fun. Like, this is not different elf,
Yeah. These are the ones that are, basically immortal, and they just see you as kind of a shade wandering through their lives. So, like, ooh, much like an insect. Like,
yeah. Fairy tale folk culture around elves is fascinating.
Yeah. I'll say I had years ago when I was in Scotland, I picked up this cassette. That tells you how it was. And it was the lore of the Scottish Highlands. And one of the ballads that they had recited was of this man who was walking down a Highland lane, and he sees a troop of people coming towards him on horses, and he realizes too late it's the Fairy Queen, and she spirits him away for 100 years. And it's like, and the ballad is all about his struggle of being, she's beautiful, it's amazing, but he's ripped out of his world and taken to the fairy world, and his struggle to try and return. It was a beautiful piece, and it's like, wow, okay, yeah, don't mess with
No.
elves.
Yeah.
Elves are fairy folk. Just stay the hell away from all of them.
Yeah. There's a great fairy tale about Legend of King Orpheo and the Lady Isabel, which was, or Lady something or other, which was very much, husband and wife, king and queen, love each other very much. Queen went out and slept under the wrong tree, and the king of fairies came along and said, "You're my bride now. I will come back tomorrow and spirit you away." And so she's there the next day with 1,000 of her husband's finest knights, but she's spirited away within their mists, and she's just gone. And it's like, too bad, you suck. Yeah. And so he goes insane, and then goes in search of her, and does that whole long long story, and it's kind of like, the whole idea is these are people you do not mess with.
Yeah.
Bad things happen. Very weird. Scottish isekai. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's actually a thing. You're absolutely right. That there's very much an isekai theme to a lot of those myths.
Yep, spirited away to another world.
Yeah, exactly. Gosh, the fisherman who like falls in love with a mermaid, and then there's stories about this in I think Gaelic myth and Japanese myth, where a guy falls in love with a mermaid, takes her back to his house. She's sad, and so then he goes to her kingdom under the sea, and lives with her for some period of time. And then he gets sad, wants to go back to his world. And she's like, "Dude, you don't want to do that. Don't do that. Bad idea." And he goes anyway, and then immediately like ages 1,000 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And steps on shore. Yeah, but it's
time dilation when you're in the wacky world of the Fae.
Yeah, not a good
or
thing.
mermaids.
Oh yeah. I mean, same thing basically.
Yeah.
It's one of the tough things about D&D and fantasy role-playing games in general is that D&D has kind of codified a lot of monsters, where it's like, this is what a mermaid is. It's like, well, go back to the original myths. Like that is a word used for a particular thing at one time, but it could be technically fae or elves or any number of things. Right. The words were not used as crystal clear back then.
What is it? Water dryads?
Hiroshima effect. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Dryads.
Okay, I was gonna say because those you could say if a water dyad is that could be a mermaid. They're in the water, so.
Mm-hmm. And they're basically manatees. We now know.
Which I'd love to see a manatee cast magic, but or sing it like a siren.
Exactly right. Yeah. And if you see a really huge one, you can always cry. Oh, the huge manatee. Sorry.
Only if it's going up in flames.
Right, exactly.
Oh, the huge manatee. No.
So how's your week been, anime-wise?
Well, I've started watching some of the new season just so I'm up on things. Mm-hmm. So far, it's not been a whole ton. The Fruits of Evolution I've started. Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. Okay. That's not terrible. Mm-hmm. I also started. Geez, what was the other one? Talked.
I've heard interesting things.
Talked really. It's classical music listeners.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed listeners just while other people bashed Live and Hoo Ha out of it. I enjoyed the fact that the references to the Doors, Sex Pistols, the Clash, a lot of stuff. There was some interesting stuff for me by reference. Yeah. This is beautiful classical music. And it's, Beethoven and Brahms and other stuff that's going on there with the same kind of premise. These things don't like music.
Right.
These things that have come to Earth. And now we have special people who make music who can fight them. I'm like, this is exactly listeners.
Yeah.
But classical music-wise. So I'm like, okay, that's fine, I guess. Be okay with that.
It sounds like Macross,
yeah. Yeah, it's not as nearly mechanically interesting as Macross.
Yeah.
I started watching the Harlock Saga.
Oh, cool.
Because after we had talked last week, I'm like, I want to see something that's Wagner-esque. So the classical music, I watched Talk because, so it's like all kind of fit in with that.
Nice.
And then just keeping Ganbare Doki-chan, which is office worker kind of shorts. They're about 6 minutes a piece.
Okay.
It's a cute series. I think it's easy to watch in a very short period of time. And then trying to get through the end of Aquatope.
Oh, okay.
And I thought I was in spitting distance. It's 24 episodes
long. I just noticed that on this season thing. It's like,
I was just looking at it. I'm like, okay, we're gonna have the new season. We're gonna have Jobless Reincarnation is coming back up. I thought I saw something that said redo of Healer, which had its own serious issues with like how that series started and just all the things that happened. So there's all these other things I'm getting excited for. I'm like, okay, I'll just put Aquatope. I'll get that done. I'll put that, put that away. I'm like,
check it off.
Oh, good night. I've got a long way to go. Oh, like this is not going to be easy.
Yeah.
So that's been this week. It's just trying to catch up with as much stuff as I can do. Watch a few starting episodes because we're going to be watching our review. What's it, next week?
Yeah, next week we'll do our
So we're coming up on our seasonal anime, so I want to make sure I got a couple under the belt.
Okay. Yep.
In case, because I'm going to wake up early, get the dogs out and done, and then get in on this. So if I miss anything.
Fortunately, the fall season's fairly short, so you don't have tons to go through like we sometimes do.
Yeah. But we still have enough.
We
still
no
have
question.
enough to get through. So that's been this week for anime. It's just trying to catch up and put things away. I finished up. Oh, good night. What was it? I actually watched Josei Totora to Sakana Tachi. So Josei, the Tiger and the Fish, the movie.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Really, it was a good film.
Okay.
Silent Voice did it better.
Okay.
So it's really interesting. It's certainly worth the watch. I didn't get as much off of that as I did from Silent Voice. So, but it was very nice to watch. It was very enjoyable.
Cool.
And then I also caught up more Anne to make sure I could be in the place and time in case it was like I ran out of time to see enough Anne for the next weekly dig. So,
cool.
That's been things. How about you?
Not watching much anime. I have been watching something anime related though. I got back to Natsuzora, which is a live action drama about one of the first major female animators in the anime industry.
Ooh.
So she started back in the 50s, working at Toei Animation, or Toyo Animation, as it is in this drama. Because everything has the serial numbers filed off. But it's really interesting. I think I may have mentioned this before when I started watching it a while ago. And I forget what it's from. I'll see if I can find out. Because this is part of a whole thing that NHK does. The Asadora series. That's what it is. These are the morning dramas that are shown on NHK. Every morning they show a 15-minute episode from an ongoing drama every weekday. And the first one aired in 1961 with A Daughter and Me. They're generally about some woman facing adversity in her life. So something kind of soap opera-esque. But telling the story of one individual woman living things. And the basic idea is, housewife would turn this on in the morning, get her little, fix of the story while the kids are getting up and so forth and so on. It's very much focused on kind of that audience. This came out in, I think, 2019. 2019. It is about Reiko Okuyama, and it's really cool because it's really interesting. It is they completely fictionalize the events of her life. She actually, they changed her name to begin with.
Right.
But also the real Reiko was a sickly child who liked to draw in bed, and that's kind of what happened to her, and then she kind of started on her career. In the story, she is a war orphan from World War II, who is adopted by a farming family in Hokkaido, and kind of has to integrate into their lives, because as a result they can sort of do Grave of the Fireflies. And tell sort of Grave of the Firefly story, and then when she goes to live with the gruff uncle Heidi.
I was thinking Anne. For a second, it's like.
And then absolutely. There's a lot of Anne in it as well. It's very Anne of Green Gables. It's hilarious. It's all this stuff worked in.
Oh my goodness.
But then, I don't know where they found the little girl to play her, because holy crud can she act. they really like show all sorts of emotional range on this girl, and like they deal with a lot of stuff around like the World War II experience for the Japanese, and having to adopt this little girl, and like the family already has two daughters, and so she has to kind of figure out her place within that whole thing, and like the other girls aren't quite sure about, daddy just brought home another little girl, what do we do here? And like there's not a lot of food to go around.
Kids, I got you a puppy.
Yeah, pretty much.
Hey, kids, I got you a sister.
Yeah, it's basically it. And like to give you an idea, and I don't think this is a spoiler, like she is the daughter of like his war buddy who like they swore that like if I die you take care of my family, vice versa.
One of those. Okay.
Yeah, and the thing is, Natsu has a brother and a sister, and he goes and he can't find the other two.
Ooh.
Or more, actually no, I take that back. He goes and what was it that he can only take one of them, and so they have to kind of decide who goes, and they decide to let Natsu go with him, because that's right. There's some wartime thing around like how many kids you could adopt and how many kids like they would allow to release from one of these like asylums basically at any given time.
Yeah.
So he could only take one, and so then he goes, and then like immediately they lose track. Like there's no records, there's no keeping track of where all these kids are going. It's just a whole drama around that.
It sounds like there's a lot of opportunities for dramatic
yes,
storytelling. Like,
there's very dramatic.
there's the other kids' arc.
Yes.
Like what happens in their lives? Like, hey.
And then so that's basically weeks 1 to. And here's the problem: it's basically the equivalent of 100 half-hour episodes, because it's
wow.
6 months worth of 15-minute episodes every weekday. So there's a lot of material to get through.
Dang, yeah.
So the first 2 weeks are basically her growing up on this farm and getting to know everybody and kind of settling in. And then week 3 is her as an adolescent and starting to go through sort of adolescent. She's like 15, I think, and started going into problems with the co-op, and the grandfather doesn't like the co-op, and there's a whole drama there, and what do we do because they're trying to do a thing and he doesn't like them doing the thing, and I got to do something for grandpa, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And as you can tell, it kind of lost my interest a little bit. But I then jumped forward to week 10, and that's where she gets her first job at Toyo Animation. So I think I'm going to spend some time there, kind of get through some of the plot with her actually as an animator. The reason I'm watching it is because I was seeing an interview with a guy, some guy who's been like working in anime for decades, an actor, Japanese like producer or something, and he casually mentioned, I've been working in anime like since the 50s, and if you want to know what it's like, watch Natsuzora. Like, that is basically a documentary about what it is like. Like, they got it right. So I'm like, okay, you got my interest. So very cool, very interesting, and looking forward to see where that goes. A lot of fun. So, also adorable opening credit sequence. It's very much a sort of world masterpiece theater of a little girl running along with animals, cavorting through meadows and so forth and so on. And then a woman like animating, them basically, the
right.
whole thing. So
cool,
cute. So I'll let you all know what happens in any sort of more stuff I get out of that. But
everybody's going to want to know what happened in that section that you don't watch, where it's the co-op fight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
People are going to be thirsty for that and be like, oh yeah, it's great. She's an animator. What happened to the co-op?
Yeah.
Did Grandpa go to war, get his tractor out and his rake, and start like smacking people around?
But what about the neighbor's cow?
Exactly.
That's literally the plot of it. It's like, okay, all right.
Well, Hokkaido cows have the best milk.
Well,
so
that's actually the plot. So I will
full on legit issues there.
Quick digression. This was kind of interesting. So this family has kind of like the best. They're considered to have like the best milk in the area, the most prestigious farm, and so it's like 1946, and they all take a trip to the nearest town, where there's a restaurant there, which is remarkable that restaurants are running. And he brings some milk, and they say, "Ooh, you have." I think I can figure out how to make ice cream. Because you have like really nice creamy milk. I think I can actually make some ice cream out of this. If you guys want to stay here for a bit, I'll make some ice cream out of this by like folding it, by like chilling a slab and making ice cream out of it, and so forth and so on.
Okay, yeah.
And so they make ice cream. And the family has this ice cream. And they're all like, oh, this is divine. This is amazing. Grandfather, are you going to, do this with them? And he's like, no. We're not going to make ice cream. And they go, why? And he goes, because there are so many families in Japan who can't even afford milk right now.
1946?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, he's like, we're going to wait until things recover and then maybe ice cream. But for now, we got to focus on the basics. It's like, wow, yeah, like it's a fair point. So, neat stuff. Anyway.
Cool.
Yeah. So speaking of Anne of Green Gables, let's talk a little bit about Anne of Green Gables. Let me just pull up my thing, and we can talk about that. I want to make sure I have a little spoiler warning.
4 through 6.
4 through 6.
Right.
Yep, talking about 4 through 6 of Anne. There we go. And I should make sure I get the right one because it's 4 through 6. Why is that? Oh, there we go. Bink. So yeah, let's talk about Anne of Green Gables episodes 4 through 6.
4 through 6.
So we talked about 1 through 3 last week, and John, would you like to get everyone up to speed as kind of where we left off?
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where we left off. I mean, we have Marilla taking Anne to the asylum, but taking her to the woman that hooked her up, and she and Matthew with getting a boy. So he takes Anne over to that woman to talk to that woman about, this was a mistake. They have the grandmotherly lady shows up from next door who's like kind of frightening.
Yeah, they didn't explain this like really clearly in the anime. And I think it's because we're kind of seeing it from Anne's perspective, where she doesn't know what's going on.
Right.
But basically, somebody else in their community, and I'm forgetting her name too, she went to the orphanage and picked up a girl for herself and Anne. So she was the one basically to go to the orphanage. She came back, dropped off Anne, went home.
Yeah.
And so like she's not like connected to the orphanage, but she was the one who did the transaction, if you will, to bring Anne back. Yeah.
The BOGO. Buy one, get one.
There we go. Yes, pretty much.
Hey.
And so exactly right. And so Marilla's taking Anne over, and because this is Anne of Green Gables, that is episode 4.
Yep.
Is just the trip in the trap over to there, as we learn more about Anne and what's going on.
And Anne being Anne.
Yep.
Where she's obviously distressed at this, but nope, she's going to enjoy this trip in the end if she has to.
Exactly. Yep. And so we get this very interesting, actually, conversation between the two of them, because Anne, as you say, kind of bounces back and forth. Like, there are times when she's kind of sad, times when she's cheerful. And, like, watching this again, I realized how much, as Anne is talking, Marilla is really processing. The first time through, I thought Marilla was just kind of sitting there, just kind of listening generally. But no, like, she's clearly very aware of what's going on and asking some interesting kind of probing questions as Anne starts talking.
And being so warm and inviting asking those questions.
Well, it is Marilla we're talking about.
Yeah, the Marilla. She's like the Ice Age. This lady is cold.
Yeah.
Especially given that here is this waif-like little kid. And Marilla is, it's like, I understand there's been a mistake.
Yeah.
But it's like, how that's the interesting sort of analysis. Like, how do you cope with that? Do you be really nice, really sweet to Anne and like, try to lessen the impact?
Right.
In which case, that makes Anne feel like she belongs with you more, so you make the separation harder? Or do you sort of close off and be this, glacial person where Anne doesn't feel like she's making any headway, and that way it's like, okay, well, I don't really get along with her. I get along with Matthew. There's some connection there, but Marilla I don't, so I don't feel as bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, so it's sort of interesting because Marilla really plays that up well.
She's clearly a very no-nonsense person.
Yeah.
And
she's not high on the imagination scale.
No, she is not. And you wonder what her life was like.
Yeah.
To get her to this point where she's just very, I do my thing and I go to bed, basically, is her life.
She, to some greater or lesser degree, given the time period, she is taking care of Matthew.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
You know what I mean? It's like Matthew is the farmer. He's doing the farm thing, and it's like, you kind of get this sense where it's like, Matthew's not good with women. So Marilla has been given the responsibility. You do the things that need to happen domestically. You cook, you do whatever, you arrange everything so that Matthew can do the farming stuff.
Yeah.
Which means Marilla kind of has to put her life on hold while she's trying to get Matthew to do the thing that earns them a living.
Yeah. And we do learn later on a little bit about Marilla's past.
Yes, but in 7 through 9, you see a tiny little snippet of it.
I'm talking about like episode 42.
Okay.
But yes,
but in 7 through 9,
right.
you get a little bit more where you see a young Marilla, and it's just like, oh, okay.
So we have this sort of conversation, and to your point, they kind of hammer that home very quickly here, where Marilla has this conversation. Saying, this is a mistake. Anna's a mistake. She shouldn't be here. Whatever. And again, Marilla is just having a conversation. Like, she's not thinking about. Anne hears this and then gets up and runs off. And runs away. And I love how this is handled because Anne doesn't yell.
Nope.
She doesn't make a big scene. She doesn't burst into tears. She just needs some space. And so she runs over. Marilla sees this. She is obviously very sympathetic.
She just flies out of the truck to go get it.
Right. But instead she sits there, and again, to her credit, she doesn't yell either. Like, she says, "Anne, where are you going?" But she right. But she doesn't like go after her and like grab her by the arm or anything. Yeah. She kind of lets her have her space. And we have this another great Takahata scene of just sitting with it.
Yep.
And kind of has time to think and process.
I love the usage of the horse.
Yeah.
That scene, Marilla she doesn't yell, but she also doesn't get angry.
Yeah.
And she is not tense, where she would have the reins tight and the horse kind of fidgeting. She slacks the reins. The horse is just eating, just standing there. And everybody's getting that moment.
And I think this is where Takahata is kind of communicating to the audience, Marilla would make a good mother. Like, she does understand what's going on here, and in her own way is giving Anne the space she needs and giving her what she needs.
She's patient.
Yes.
And not flustered in what could easily have been a very volatile moment.
Yeah. Especially, a child acting out in front of adults.
Yeah, in late 19th century.
Yeah.
Where children are to be seen and not heard.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So Anne takes her time. She comes back in, and Anne apologizes, and Marilla apologizes as well.
Yep.
And says, I didn't realize what I was saying. I can see why that was, that was a lot for you to hear in that moment. And so we move on. It's like, thank you.
And when Anne takes off too, I like the fact that She runs to a piece of downed fencing.
Yeah.
She doesn't run up the road or down the road. She runs perpendicular to the trap.
Yep.
So that she's within sight.
Yeah.
But it's like when she went out to say hi to the Snow Queen and say hi to all of nature.
Yeah.
She runs out into nature to a spot where she can sit. She's away from the road, so she's surrounded by the field.
Yeah.
And it's quiet. And then once she's had her moment, perpendicular back to the trap, rejoins.
Yep.
It's like, okay, that nature element has reset her.
Yep.
To get her back again.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, okay, cool. I see the usage of how you're doing this.
Yeah.
Takahata. It's very interesting here.
It's almost like he knows what he's doing.
I know. For a first-time project, he did fantastic.
Yeah. The guy didn't know what he was doing. Yeah.
And he used to drive a bus. No,
yeah.
what?
Yeah, and so you get a bunch more of Anne's history here as a result. This wonderful use of imagination as she remembers the home she grew up in that she doesn't remember.
Yeah.
Oh. Lovingly rendered, of course.
Yeah.
Gonna do that. All the things she remembers. Yeah, I do love the shot of Anne as a baby because okay.
Well, that was Spirit Anne floating over the baby for your point of view shot.
Exactly.
Like what? Because I mean, in all honesty, how would anybody really know how this works? You know, did any of Anne's flashbacks? Any of them contain somebody sitting down and saying, "Anne, let me tell you about your birth"?
No.
It's like I don't know that anybody would have told her this. So this is just it's pure speculation on her part.
Yep. Yeah.
Were her parents really teachers?
Yeah, who knows?
Or is this made up?
Yeah. Yeah. Could well be.
She was born on a prison hulk, being transported to Australia. Somehow her parents got separated when she ended up in Prince Edward Island.
Well, she had the whole thing about being a princess.
Ah, see, okay.
And she had that whole thing of, well, maybe I'm in the whole Cordelia thing.
Yeah.
So.
I love that. Could you call me Cordelia? That was awesome.
Is that your name? No, it's just a lovely name.
Wow. What great 19th century concept.
Exactly.
Cordelia's a lovely name. Is it?
What's back then? How many Marthas do you know?
I think in Beetlejuice, yeah, Cordelia eats. I mean, that's awesome. Not so much now.
And then you get the flashbacks to her young childhood, which is... Hoy, exactly.
Yeah.
It's tough. We see a lot of what she had to do and kind of deal with the alcoholic father figure.
Yeah.
And all the stuff there, and seeing that. And again, full props to Takahata and crew for the expressions on everyone's faces, because you only get one shot at this. Like, there's not a lot of animation going on, so those facial expressions have to communicate exactly what, and boy, do they.
Poverty, distress, arguably somewhat like hunger.
Yeah.
You know, nobody looks like scrawny, but like when she's on the carriage with the kids, none of them look like healthily childish. Like,
yeah.
And much like Schindler's List, I love the fact that he keeps Anne's red hair.
Yes.
It's like that is a poignant, focus when you see her. It's like, oh, Anne. That's Anne. Oh, Anne.
Exactly.
And everybody else is all these monochrome.
And even further, in Anne's mind, that is the one thing that differentiates her.
Yeah.
So it even works in character. She's like, and I'm the red-haired kid, you know.
Yeah.
Oh.
No blondes, no brunettes, just redhead kid, and then gray tone everybody else.
Exactly. And
Anne did not look healthy in any of that.
No, she did not. Definitely a scrawny kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you come back to essentially Anne and the orphanage, the asylum. I love this shot of the asylum and every single window crowded with kids' heads.
Yeah.
Like, oh gosh.
It's full of friends.
Oh.
There is a certain
fact,
bonding element to desperate times, I guess.
Isn't there a line in there somewhere where she says that when she's picked up from the asylum, they say something like, "It's a good thing, so we don't really have space for you."
Yeah.
Like basically, as soon as you're gone, like we're still full. We just can't take it.
Which kind of makes you wonder what the heck was going on in 19th century Prince Edward Island that the orphanages are like jammed full of kids.
It's called illness, and pioneering. Like you're out there. There was the Laurel Ingalls Wilder books. There was one
Little House on the Prairie.
Little House on the Prairie. There was one scene in that, and apologies, this is depressing, but it's fiction. Where
Still depressing fiction.
Well, it is. A husband and wife go out, to market, leave the kids at home. There's a blinding snowstorm. They can't get back for a week. They come back to find the frozen bodies of their children in an empty house because they had burned all the furniture to stay alive, waiting for their parents to come back home.
Oh.
Yeah. And again, fictional, but it's like that's the kind of thing that can happen. Because,
wow.
Suddenly, you what do you do? Like, you can't helicopter in. So, yeah, there's...
So the parents decided to move, and they moved with the Donner Party. Oh, geez, no. God, really? These parents had the worst luck ever.
Exactly, yes. And they moved to Hiroshima. And
yeah. We're leaving America. Let's move to Nagasaki. Yeah. This will be a great opportunity. No, it will not.
Let's go to Rwanda. Anyway, so we get all that backstory, and again, Marilla processing, hearing all this, thinking about it, and clearly, wondering what's going on with this kid, and the fact that
Well, you get a sense from some of the way that she's looking, because she said earlier, how bewitched that Matthew is, that she's bewitching. And you kind of get a sense that, Marilla even having that conversation in the trap is trying to probe out, why is Matthew... He only had the ride from the station to the farm. And I was like, why is Matthew, a really shy guy who's not good with females, why is he obviously leaning towards keeping Anne?
Yeah.
So Marilla is just kind of ever so slightly prodding and poking to figure out what's going on there.
And it's also revealing that she is the difference between those rides, where Matthew is just sitting there and kind of letting Anne wash over him, as Anne does. Whereas Marilla is, okay, what made you? What decisions, what processes led to where you are now, so that I can understand that. Matthew's obviously a much more sort of intuitive kind of person. Marilla's much more intellectual and trying to understand all of these pieces and kind of being psychological about it. Which is very
in a controlled and sort of, cubicled kind of
way.
way.
Definitely, yes.
They put the four corners around you and figure, what are you in this box?
Right, exactly.
Okay. We get it, Marilla. You're under control. A lot of stuff going on here.
Yes, she is.
She must be so fun at the square dance barn raising. Oh, boy.
Dancing is immoral.
Oh, like hand holding, it leads to pregnancy.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get to that. I mean,
okay, I don't want. No, that's terrible. Hand holding and dancing pregnancy. Wow.
Not that.
Wow, I didn't think this show was gonna go there.
Doesn't go there, but no. I mean, Marilla does not believe in dancing. She believes that dancing is not proper.
Oh boy.
That's the whole thing. And then. We get closer and closer to White Sands Missile Base. Wait, no, the hotel. As Anne sees her fate getting closer and closer, and we see her getting quieter and quieter. And again, Marilla observing this, going, And then we jumped.
Just bringing her back is just crushing this little girl's soul.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Interesting.
Which again, I think you're absolutely right. That is kind of what she's thinking. Is what am I doing here?
Yeah.
And they show up, and then Marilla comes in her very no nonsense way is like, okay.
And again, a beautifully Anne's thought of her house.
Mm-hmm.
This just really did you have an architect do this
Yeah,
stuff?
no kidding.
The houses are awesome. Like, they're so well drawn.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the animals are a little sketchy on how they work.
Yeah, absolutely.
The architectural aspects are great. The nature in general is awesome.
Absolutely. And again, this is not a Japanese house.
Yeah.
Like this is not necessarily natural for these animators to be able to know what this should look like.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't like any, Akira certainly, gone on anime pilgrimages where you can be like, oh, that's the alleyway and that's the shrine. It's like, I really doubt there's some place in Japan the animators be like, okay, let's hop on the bus and go for like reference material. Where again is that 19th century housing district that we can find stuff to reference?
Yeah, Canadian World wouldn't come along for several decades.
Yeah. Oh my!
I told my friends about that today, and the reaction was priceless. Like, there is what? They built what? Phones came out. Yeah, that's that. Wow, that is actually a thing.
Well, our friendly neighbors to the north, they're worthy of an entire theme park.
Oh, at least one.
Go for it.
And then twist the knife. We see the little girl that Anne came over with, happily playing.
With her new family.
Everybody's
happy. Such a great time. Oh. Yeah. And of course, as modern adoptions kind of go, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I've only read stuff and heard things that modern adoptions skew to young children.
Right. Yeah.
They don't skew into the higher ages because of, the concept that there'll be problems with that. So this woman has gone to the orphanage, gotten Anne and this tiny little girl, and has given Anne off.
Yeah.
And has kept the tiny little girl. It's like, oh, geez, that's kind of...
Yeah.
Sure, that makes Anne feel good. Be like,
right.
oh, you're older? I don't want you.
Right.
You go over there. I'm going to keep this little girl.
Yeah.
The little girl's just cute as a button with a little bonnet.
Absolutely. Running around. And so we try to deal with that. We see what's going to go on here. Because fortunately, there's a solution.
Ugh.
And I love the introduction of this woman. Because she comes in and she's just, she's the evil godmother. Just straight up. Like
the Wicked Witch of the West.
Totally.
All she needs is a broom. Oh, God, no, we're the monkeys.
It's like just, jeez. Very, very clear where we're going with this one, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, and yeah, Anne's not particularly impressed. What's also interesting, and again, I'm not sure whether it's an animation mistake or not, they don't color her eyes white. Her eyes are like sallow.
Yeah. Well, quite honestly, she reminded me of like an evil Scooby-Doo character.
Yeah, absolutely.
She walked up, she could be like the Green Ghost or the Creeper. Like, oh boy, here we go. Hanna-Barbera, did you have a hand in this too?
Oh, very much so. Almost cartoonish.
Yeah, like really much so.
Yeah. And then she does this thing, which I kind of realized. She takes Anne by the chin.
Yeah.
And I just realized it's the first time Anne's ever been touched in the show. Matthew doesn't touch her. Marilla doesn't touch her. Right?
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah. And so there's just something a little bit, what you doing here, lady?
Well, quite honestly, when that happened, the first thought in my mind was that she was going to stick her thumb in Anne's mouth and be like, do you have all your teeth?
Right.
Are you healthy? Okay, it feels like you might be able to work. Yeah. I don't know why that thought ran through my mind. I'm just like, this is like a livestock inspection. To like, is she stable enough to stand? Yeah, okay, I'll take that one.
Yeah, it definitely has that feeling to it.
Yeah.
And so they go inside, we have tea, and again, one of those things you don't think about. At the beginning of this scene, everything is from Anne's angle.
Yeah.
We're always looking up at these adults as they're making decisions about Anne's life that she has no control over.
Yeah.
Uh,
Which do you consider that? Do you consider that insensitive or inclusive? Because they're having a great debate about what this little girl's life's going to be. Mm-hmm. Would that be more sensitive to her if you said, "Why don't you go out and play with the girls, and we're going to talk,
right?
And you just have fun, just relax, and we'll come talk to you after."
Right. Yeah.
Or by sitting her in the middle of this, where it's like, "Are you talking about the settee?"
Right.
I don't know. It's good enough. I got things I need that for. It's like, I don't know what the, It's great Anne knows the decision-making process, but wow, how to make you feel like a cheap piece of furniture.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, I think there's absolutely a practical side of it, is that this is the person we're talking about. So let's have her here so we can,
inspect
to
her.
Yeah, exactly, pretty much. And talk it over. But the other side of the coin is, the woman inviting them in is clearly, she is sensitive to what's going on. So I think she's like, I'm not just going to shove her out the back door. She's kind of part of the party, if you will. Although now that I think about it,
we're at this stage. We're early into this story. Mm-hmm. Boy, this has got to be terribly crappy for Anne, because that lady who adopted the little girl. Mm-hmm. It would be, you could just feel, would be like the best mom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Would just make Anne's life so idyllic and just just everything she could ask for. And she's got Marilla.
Yep.
Matthew, certainly Matthew.
Sure.
That's the silver lining to that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But Marilla, at this point in time, we don't have a lot of loving glow out of Marilla. So it's just like, why? That it puts you in a place of Anne to be like, why couldn't I have been in that house?
Exactly.
This nice lady serving tea in this nice place. Oh.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I think that's kind of what they're going for here. Is it this sense of Anne's very much stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
And there's so many ways her life could have gone that it's not going.
Yeah, it continues to not go.
Yes. And then I love how they focus on Anne's expression when the old lady says, "Well, I think I'll take her," and you see just her, you see her get kind of crushed at that realization, and then you cut over. I should also point out again, it's great framing. Before we get to that, Anne is sitting on one side of the room, with the adults on the other side of the room having the conversation, and then bridged by the old woman. And then she goes back again.
And if you notice, there's only 3 servings of tea.
I was just seeing that.
None offered to Anne.
I'm not sure about that, because I think I remember seeing there's a table next to her where there's a cup of tea sitting, but I can't find it. So I think she may have been offered tea and she's just doesn't have it. But I'm not sure. I'm not
I was gonna say, because when I watched it, I didn't ever notice anything next to her but her bag and her hat.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is again one of those, the adults are talking.
Right. Yeah.
And you
sense.
just sit there.
Mm-hmm.
You're like,
like a good little, like a good child.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's great is we see Marilla's expression. And we see Marilla see this, and the camera angle moves up. And now we're seeing things a little bit more from the adult's perspective. And then we move all the way up as Marilla goes, "Well, actually."
Yeah.
And think about this from Marilla's perspective at this point, right? She's certainly seen Anne's past. I'm sure there's a part of her who feels that is certainly a shame that this little girl had to go through all this. But what does that have to do with me? Right? Like, I'm not responsible for this little girl. I can't fix all of social ills. I've taken her. Here's someone who can take her off my hands. Done and dusted. I go back to my life. But she still makes the decision to stand up and go very much against social convention.
Yeah.
By basically, coming up with a social way of saying, "Well, actually, no, I'm going to take her anyway. F off." Basically.
Well, and as you had pointed out, Marilla is processing things. So Anne running out of the trap and coming back to the trap, processing. Well, she told that story about, having to take care of the kids, and she was a babysitter for the kids, and she, terrible family kind of thing. And here's this old woman like, well, I've got things I need done, and I've got stuff that has to be managed. So she's going to help do that. And it's like, you can't help but like connect those two dots to be like that Marilla's kind of like, gosh, that's kind of like when she was living in that other house and having to well so that even though she could walk away from it, it's like she would be perpetuating the same kind of experience on Anne when she has the opportunity to alter that course. And it's like good on you, Marilla. Good on you.
And we saw her early on with Anne the day she was there, having her do the dishes, having her do chores, and going, oh, she can do that. She could be useful around the house. So that is,
and we know that Marilla is religious.
True. Yep.
So that she wants Anne to say her prayers, learn her prayers. So there is some element, I think, that locks all of this in, where Marilla is not willing to perpetuate the problem, that she wants to intervene in a way that is helpful and meaningful to another person's life.
Absolutely.
And it's just like, good. Good. Because I, up to this point, not remembering, 7th grade English, I'm like, oh God, if Marilla lets her go, and this is like the story of Anne's like fall from humanity, and like, oh God, no.
Yeah. And Japan and Anne sees this, and we see all these emotions play over Anne's face.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool. And a lovely Takahata scene of flowers and all sorts of stuff, which crowd out Anne's vision. And this is what I find kind of interesting, is it crowds out her vision, except for the three women, not just Marilla. Right?
Yeah.
Anne doesn't necessarily she obviously sees Marilla as her savior, but it's not like she's focused entirely on Marilla. It's like, oh good, this problem has been solved.
Right. These three adults came to a resolution that doesn't make my life terrible.
Exactly.
Oh, hallelujah. Thank all three of you for not ruining the rest of my existence.
Exactly.
Sweet.
Yep.
It's the little things.
Yes. And then this fascinating moment where she comes up to thank Marilla, and Marilla holds her head. And Anne pulls back a little bit. And she's like, oh. What's going on here? And we know, as we know later, that Marilla gets headaches.
Yep.
And what a perfect symbol of childhood, of trying to read other people and getting mixed signals because you think you're causing them trouble, but no, they just have a headache right now.
Yeah. Which, quite honestly, it's twofold in this. Marilla has just stood up to say, well, to another woman in the community who's like, well, now I'll take the kid.
Yeah.
So it's like she's bucking like a social moment here. So I can understand her being like, I natively have a headache, but also, oh God, this is gonna come back at me in so many different ways that I don't even know.
Think back to her conversation with Rachel, Rachel Lynn, and all this. Well, at least you didn't get a girl.
Yeah. Like, oh God, here we go. So this is a headache in a lot of real ways.
Absolutely.
For her.
And of course, Anne takes this in the most sober and quiet way possible, as she walks over and is enveloped in flowers yet again.
Yeah.
Because
Anovision.
Exactly, Anovision.
Just all kinds of wonderful things happening. It's just a late 19th century house. There's nothing actually happening.
But to your point, nature. That's her happy place, definitely.
Yep.
Yeah. And so they go back, and Marilla again, her wonderful, warm, soft heart immediately says, "Now wait a minute, we haven't made a full decision yet.
Dial it down."
Thanks.
I might crush your hopes and dreams
Exactly,
later.
right? Yeah.
But for now, you're safe. Oh, lady.
Right, but again, I think this is Marilla being forthright, being honest, saying,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't want to set your hopes up and say this is a completely done deal. I want you to have all the information.
Which, can I point out that apparently adopting a child in like late 19th century in upper Canada does not involve any paperwork.
Well, this is actually the thing that comes back. She doesn't. They do not adopt her. She is not adopted. They are just keeping her.
They're just hosting.
Yes.
An orphan child.
Yes. This is actually one of the things that comes back. Is they're like, no, she's not technically adopted. She is just we took her out of the asylum and accepted custody of her essentially.
Right.
But yeah, there's no legal parentage, so to speak.
Which is interesting because that would, you hear stories now about people like, oh, I found who my birth mother was, or who my birth parents were, and I've traced them back, and they unsealed the records, and I was able to find these things out. And it's like, wow, I guess at this point in time, when a kid like disappears into Prince Edward Island, you're just like, the record ends there.
Yeah.
Oh yes, this child went to Prince Edward Island. Where? We don't know. They were hosted by somebody. They might have gone to the North Pole.
Right.
They could be in Mexico. Who knows?
Well, this is the other thing, is that, okay, so you write down in your paper ledger that a child named Anne Shirley came into your asylum. Great. And then record that she leaves. Is anyone ever going to come back and find that piece of paper? Right? Like, there's so many things where, like, records may even exist, but connecting any of these pieces, yeah.
Finding your lineage in those days was not genealogy.com.
Yeah, no. Exactly.
For like a lot of stuff when I was in Germany trying to look up family stuff where they're the Catholic parish record.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, well, we had the records up to a point, and it's like, let me guess, 1945?
Yeah, right.
Like, yeah, like a good portion of them burned during the war. I'm like, go figure that answer, huh?
Yep.
Gotcha. Thanks for the help.
Yeah, good luck finding a lot of Japanese records prior to 1933.
Yeah. Like the war did all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And I mean, subsequent kind of stuff. Because when I was living in England, like you could go to like a country parish church and stuff, and they would have a little snippet thing about the church, and it's like, oh, this church was built in like 1308, and then it burned in like 1402, and then it was rebuilt and it burned in 1516, and then it was rebuilt and it burned in 1780, and it's like, wow. I'm going to presume every single time the church records went up with it. I mean,
well, and it's so. People we talked about before about Monty Python and the Holy Grail,
right?
And how there's actually a lot of like subtle humor in that. The whole, it burned down, fell over, and then sank into the swamp, but the fourth one stood up. I think it's very much that joke, is that so many things just fell and rose and fell and rose,
burning, and it's like, oh damn it. But Father, I want to sing. No, we're not having any of that.
Singing.
He's going to sing. No, he's going to tell. He's going to tell. He's going to tell. Anyway, moving on. Back to Anne.
Let's not bicker and argue over who killed who.
But you kicked the bride in the chest.
Oh boy, yeah, we could spend all night on Python.
Yeah,
that is kind of the thing. Yeah, and so Anne finds this out. We go back home. Note that Matthew is out waiting for them.
Yep. I mean, I love the way Matthew's done.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just this very lovable guy. You know what I mean? It's like he's drawn in such a soft way that he's just like, oh, you just want to hug him. Like the bushy mustache and stuff. Like
the gentle giant.
Yeah.
Archetype, absolutely.
It's hard to believe he's like 60-something.
Yeah.
He doesn't look 60-something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's up there. So they come back to doing Gables. Anne comes in. And it is interesting seeing that, like you were saying, she knows it's not decided yet. And so she is happy, but she's not, like, joyous.
Yeah.
And
she can't get ecstatic quite yet.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
She sees Bonnie.
She sees Bonnie, exactly.
Konnichiwa, Bonnie.
And goes up to what might be her room. and you have the conversation between Marilla and Matthew, and I found this interesting as well, where they're just kind of talking. Okay, what's going on here? Like what are our plans here? When Marilla is like, well, I made the decision, but I'm still unsure. But also like, and Matthew's like, this is good, and Marilla's like, but understand, like, we need to have boundaries here. Like, we need to decide, like, am I raising her or are you raising her? Right.
Right.
What's going to happen here? And again, I think we go back to what we were talking about before, where Matthew is much more of the instinctual, well, just, it'll be fine. And Marilla's like, no, we need a plan.
Yeah, Matthew is by all definition the doting father.
Yeah, absolutely.
If he was left to raise Anne, she would have nothing but like 24/7 imagination running through the birch forest, all that, just living like the best kid life.
Yeah, right.
Marilla was raising her solely. It's like she would wear very prim and proper clothing, and she would do the domestic things that she has to do and be supportive and not utilize her imagination like she does.
No.
Like, so them trying to find that balance is like a really interesting, it's a very yin and yang kind of thing, where it's like, where are they going to balance out with that?
Yeah. I don't think Marilla knows what imagination is.
Yeah. Well, she knows enough to not like it.
Yeah, exactly. And again, note the colors here. The fact that they're actually like yellowing all of the art because it's late afternoon.
Yep.
Love it. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. And so then Anne has, and I love she reads a little bit and then she's out like a light. Like, it's been a big day.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of life decision making for a small child that's happened in this afternoon. It's the whole day here.
Yeah. Speaking of, and it's again one of those things where I just connected, talking about records and so forth. When they go back to the woman's house, the old woman goes up and the other woman says, she's about 11 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, they probably don't know. Nobody knows her exact age. That's the thing. God.
Yeah, because you never get a sense of Anne's backstory that anybody again was filling out her paperwork.
No.
Because she passed around to here to there and ends up at the asylum. I'm very doubtful that somebody was like, oh, yeah, here's this kid, and she was born at this date in this location to these people.
Yep.
Nope. Probably more likely like, here you go. There's a kid right there. Have fun. Thanks.
But then we get, again, like that scene you were talking about before, where she just looks around the room.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic.
And it's it's so minimalist in the what's in the room, but it's just so beautifully rendered in the way that it's that moment that you get to look. And it's like, wow, this is really good use of these things.
Yeah.
Like, Takahata, very good
And
job.
especially the show for children. Again, it's not constantly throwing things at you.
Right.
You get some time.
She hasn't picked up the yokai watch. There's not any Beyblade going on. It's amazing. She hasn't been isekai'd yet. It's amazing.
Totally. And then you get just a little bit more about her trying to figure out what her life is going to be like. And I do appreciate that her expressions here are subdued. She's thinking, okay, if I'm staying with this woman, this is not the idyllic life I was looking for. Like this is a disappointment to an extent. Which is fair.
It's reality.
Yeah.
And exactly. Anne's life, the reality Anne has experienced has not been favorable. So this is a reality that intrudes on her imagination time. Which is, I mean, you have to argue that's exactly what childhood into adulthood is. You have to leave certain things behind and face some realities. This is a far better reality with Matthew and Marilla than the other realities. So it's that mixture. You can tell she's appreciative. You can tell she's still a little trepidation there. She's not quite sure. But this is a far better reality than she's had in the rest of her life.
Absolutely. Yep. It's also neat seeing how she deals with things. If she is disappointed, and then she turns her mind to something else.
Yeah.
And she can be cheerful. She can be able. She doesn't wallow. Which again, I just kind of appreciate we get here.
Which is a great affirmation of her character trait, because the other things, if she'd wallowed, she probably would not have made it.
Exactly. Well, and
So-
to that point, one of the reasons she's so imaginative is because she's been trying to run away from her life,
Yeah.
and just not think about the situation she's in.
Which has
Oh, wow.
done her great credit to like get this far. You know what I mean? It's like that's been the life preserver that's kept her afloat.
I just realized that's a thing that becomes important later in the show. Wow, Takahata. Anyway, we'll get there.
Okay. Yeah, 50 episodes.
But yeah. My gosh, this show. It's a bit of religion, and again, remember, this is not a show made by Christians. So the fact that we get a whole thing about saying the Lord's Prayer, praying at night, and so forth is something they had to, and obviously it's in the book, but they had to like do the research to think through, like, why does Marilla think this is important? Because this is the thing people thought was important. And then we move through that. And then on to episode 6. And so episode 6, if I recall, yes. So Marilla decides to keep Anne, but decides not to tell her.
Yeah, which I thought was an interesting control element again. It's like, because you can get somebody, if you keep that up in the air, they have to behave exactly as you want them to, because they're fearful of what the result's going to be if they don't. So it's like, that's a way to get Anne roped in. Don't tell her, keep her on pins and needles, and then she'll hang the laundry, she'll make the bed, she'll clean the dishes. Everything will be done the way you want it. Anne's afraid you're going to like pull the rug out from under her.
And what's also interesting is Marilla's psychology with this, and kind of her justification is that Anne she goes off in directions so easily. She's like, if I tell her now, she's going to be over the moon for the next, 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So let's just chill for a little while. And it's not like we're never going to tell her. It's not like we're going to wait a month to tell her. Let's just wait until, later on today. It's fine. But also you kind of,
Get the things done, and then get the excitement, then bed.
Right, exactly. Which and again, there are so many parents who, have that philosophy of, let's get through the day, and then we'll deal with this later. And and move on from there. It's not a ridiculous approach, right? It's not a cruel approach. It's just from Anne's perspective, she is just kind of. But again, to that point, you see how Anne reacts. She does get on with things.
Yep.
She does get stuff done. She has lunch. She does her the dishes.
She doesn't take off when early on when she first gets to Green Gables.
Yeah.
She goes out the door and she runs up into the birches. She takes off. She sees Matthew in the field. It's like, okay, Marilla knows Anne will disappear. She'll be off and gone. No chores, no nothing.
Well, and remember when Anne first came here, she didn't even do that. When the first morning when she came down, and Marilla told her you can go out and play, she opened the door and stopped.
Yeah, and didn't go.
Yeah.
Well, then what part am I remembering?
I think you're remembering what's about to happen.
Oh.
In this episode.
Whoops. I've time skipped.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Well, then what's going to happen is exactly what Marilla didn't want
right,
to
exactly. Yes, right. That's exactly the point. Yes.
It's full circle. Here we go.
She knows exactly what's about to happen. And so finally, Anne comes up. And again, Anne has not been asking all day.
Yeah.
But it's been a while, and she's like, can you please tell me? Can you please do that? And, again, kind of to Marilla's credit, she goes, okay, fair enough. I might as well tell you now. I'm not going to arbitrarily wait. And Anne starts to cry. She is clearly joyful. She goes back to her happy place in nature. And tears start to come. And it's such a childlike thing where she doesn't quite know where her emotions are coming from.
Yeah.
She's feeling joyful. She's crying. She doesn't know why she's crying. She just kind of is. But she is clearly extremely relieved.
Yeah. Well, she now has a place to be, and it's not crappy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, so we're all crying because it's like, oh, thank goodness. Such an improvement on the life you've had as a maybe 11-year-old.
Yeah. Totally.
I'm not crying, you're crying.
Right. And then to your point, she opens the door and runs off. And it's like,
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I remember that, at a different spot. So,
Yeah.
now we're on to it.
Yeah. And
barefoot.
Yes.
The fact that she's
Absolutely.
running around barefoot everywhere. Like, have you not heard of pinworms or roundworm or anything? It's a farm.
Yeah. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Sure. Sure, that's right. 19th century medicine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Oh, boy. You
Yeah.
just need some leeches. Thanks.
No, we're much more modern than that. Here's a tincture.
A tincture. Put this mustard plaster on your back, and that'll help cure your pneumonia. What?
But to Marilla's credit, like, she calls after Anne, and then Anne runs off, and Marilla's like, fair enough, basically.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not going to stop this. In fact, later on, she comes outside, sees Anne running around, and goes, she did have a really big day. Like, I'm not going to, like, punish her or anything. It's fine. As Anne gets to run around and enjoy. And we get, in a sense, kind of the first moments. This is actually Anne of Green Gables.
Yep.
She is now settled. This is where she is. This is where she lives. And you get that sense of her feeling like this is home.
Yeah. I think certainly you still have her skew far closer to Matthew as home and family.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, not, again, we're not that far into it. I'm sure she develops more attachment to Marilla as Marilla and Matthew as family. So.
Yeah.
You've been there. I haven't gotten there yet.
Well, and it's kind of interesting also kind of swap of the standard trope of the disciplinary father and
Right.
the I don't want to say loving mother, but the softer, if you will, mother, and just kind of flipping that around.
But yeah, I mean, because that's interesting. You at the time this was made for Japan, I think you would have probably more of the stern father.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when you get this side of the Pacific, I think you start to see into the 70s and 80s where you have more of a doting father.
Oh,
You
yeah.
start backing down from that 50s, 60s, early 70s where it's like dad's the authoritarian and comes home. And you start seeing into that 80s portion where it's like dad's still, doing the dad thing, but mom is the one that's, ruling the roost and enforcing stuff. And that, the threat is, I'm going to tell your father things will be bad. But 9 times out of 10, dad's like, you did? What? Fine. Okay. I've been working all day. Just did your mother handle it? Yes. Okay, fine. That's great. I'm going to read the newspaper and have a martini. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. It's interesting for a novel from 1908 to see that kind of dynamic in this family. Certainly not the traditional thing you might expect.
Yeah.
But even so, and I don't think it's bothersome to say, I can't think of a lot of like really strict, stern father characters in the story. Even like later on, I guess that doesn't seem to be a trope that this story falls back on. I'm not sure why.
Well, as I say, I'm only up to 9 so far,
Yeah.
and it's like there's not a ton of like, at least in this first 9, there's
Well-
not like a ton of male characters.
No, there's not. In fairness, that is also kind of there's the school teacher, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
But
And the preacher
yeah.
and the church experience, but that's
Yeah.
future
And-
discussion.
But also, you also think like we also are seeing it from a child's perspective. You aren't necessarily seeing. The father figures are out in the fields or out in town,
Right.
not necessarily around as much to actually be a part of a story. Especially if we're seeing it from Anne's eyes, where maybe she goes to a friend's house, the father's not necessarily going to be there a lot. So there's just not
Yeah,
a lot of that. Yeah.
Do we see the father at Diana's?
Eventually we do, but
we don't
very
initially
rarely.
up.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, and again, putting this in its time period, like, 19th century, yeah, Anne is a child. Who's going to be home?
Right.
who's going to walk from next door to talk?
Yeah.
It's not going to be the father who's going to be like, hey, how y'all doing over here? It's like, no, you're right. The father's doing the thing. And the only people that in that child's world that they would get most exposure to would be wives, mothers, etc.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
Totally. 1 second.
And just as a disclaimer, we're not saying anything about the appropriate or inappropriateness of any gender roles and associations.
Yes, right,
this is all taken within its time period, within its milieu, the late 19th century, the early 20th century.
Exactly.
These are concepts and constructs that are appropriate to their time period.
Yes, we're talking about what the experiences would have been like for those characters.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
And then and it's interesting to me how Anne, goes and hugs Matthew, and he hugs back.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we've seen it yet. I think I'm pretty sure Anne hugs Marilla at some point, whether it's in this episode or not. But Marilla's not a hugger.
No.
It's interesting how Matthew just very naturally just kind of puts his hands around Anne. He's very sweet.
Well, I cannot envision a scenario whereby Matthew would hug Marilla.
Right.
Or that Marilla would hug Matthew.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, other than, like, maybe her straightening his shirt out or dusting something off of him, I could not envision any, like, familial contact with them at all.
No.
So it's really interesting that arguably Matthew's probably not hugged anybody.
Right.
Either since his childhood or in any other kind of context.
Great point.
This is honestly huge for him.
Yeah.
Because it's like he overcame his shyness with females.
Right. Yeah.
And he's probably experiencing something that he has not been accustomed to since he was a kid. And the man is 60.
Yeah.
It's
exactly.
like, wow. She did really truly bewitch him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Broke him out of his like isolated place and is wow.
Yeah.
Kudos to you, Anne. Good job.
That is a great
Takahata,
point.
thank you.
Yes.
This is a heartwarming moment.
Absolutely, yes. And the fact that Anne feels so comfortable with Matthew, somebody who is still, essentially a stranger, right? Like, she's spent a couple of days here, but, the fact that she just opens up to him to this extent is a credit to Matthew as much as anything else. Totally. little pinch moment. It's not a dream. It's not a dream. There's this very sweet moment of Anne bonding with Matthew.
And of course, 19th century farming technique where you're just throwing seed on the ground.
Yeah.
Like, wow, don't you have anything to like actually get the seed in? Because the crows are just waiting in the tree behind you. Like,
that's why you buy a lot of seed.
Yeah, well, that's why you buy something to get the seed in the ground. And wash your foot in the basin.
Exactly. Yep. And again, showing all these little bits and pieces. And then I find it interesting that Anne comes back in, and Marilla basically says, "So, you said you'd be right back."
Yeah. Half an hour later.
Yeah. And Anne goes, "Oh, yeah, you're right." And then Marilla says, "Okay, now, go do your thing." And it's interesting again. Marilla does not dress down Anne, right? She doesn't have a big long thing. You need to do all this kind of stuff. She just points out the behavior, says, you promised you didn't do the thing, and responds. And Marilla's like, "Okay, moving on."
And Marilla doesn't, again, like the trap. Marilla never gets up.
No.
She's just knitting.
Yep.
Like, they have this interaction. She just keeps knitting.
Yeah.
This is like... And I like when she's looking at the branch that Anne brings in. And it's like... It's so funny because I pointed this out last time.
Yeah.
Bonnie doesn't serve a purpose. It's right next to Marilla's knitting chair. So Marilla has this appreciation that she's not willing to fess up to.
Absolutely.
So when Anne is like, "I see this beautiful thing, I'm going to bring it in to make the house more beautiful." It's like Marilla's reaction to it is kind of like very interesting because it's like, lady, you're standoffish and you're kind of a little cold on that. And yet Bonnie's sitting right next to you. And that's all you, Marilla. That's all you right on that windowsill. That little sprig of living beauty. It's like, It makes me wonder, since I haven't gotten that far ahead yet, whether she's seeing that sort of connection between her quiet appreciation of beauty and Anne's exuberant appreciation of natural.
That's a great call out. Yeah, I think that connects very nicely. Trying to see what else we had here. Is they have so this is arguably the first Anne dinner, as I like to call them, where the more you watch of this show, the more you'll get used to this, because when Anne has a meal with Marilla and Matthew, Anne talks. And she's just a chatterbox the entire time.
Yep.
And we very much get that here. She's asking questions and talking and how all of the to a point where it's kind of like, oh, okay, Anne, you can go out now. Thank you.
Well, I mean, again, this is you're adding something to that was missing from their table, because Marilla and Matthew are extremely used to just sitting quietly and eating. And it's like that has been their playbook for meals. Sit quietly, eat, go about your day.
Yep.
So it's like, wow, this is such an interesting ad. And when you're looking at that table, again, Anne's red hair.
Yeah.
You look past Marilla, look past Matthew, kind of dull kind of colors. And then there's Anne.
Yep.
Like, yes, exactly. It's like, whoa, wow. Okay. Very vibrant.
Very vibrant. Very, again, almost like he knows what he's doing. Crazy. And then, see here. Oh, yeah, and then we get more of Anne talking about friendship. And we get a bit about her friends.
Bosom friend.
Yes. Who didn't actually exist. As she looks in the mirror, looks in the reflection. And again, remember, back in the day, like, you had to animate that. Like, you have to draw her from the back and from the front and synchronize both of those things. This takes effort.
Yeah.
To show.
Well, I love Anne's description of that, too. It's like she'd see her reflection in the piece of glass that wasn't broken by the drunken father.
Yeah.
Ooh. Wow. Oh, boy.
Yeah. Yay.
Yeah. Warm, delicious childhood memories. And, of course, the things in the cupboard are like drinking tankards and stuff. Like, oh, boy.
Yeah. Takahata. Oh, boy. And then you see, how all the peeled paint and all that in the house. And it's like, oh, okay, this is as bad as it seemed to be.
This house is in ill repair.
Yeah, exactly. But Anne has her friend, and she goes flying off into Belladonna Sadness Land. With her best friend.
And this is when you find out that Anne had consumption and she's passed. Oh no,
John, you have no idea.
Oh, jeez, no.
No. There's a whole joke about that later on, but we'll get there.
Oh boy. This is all a fever dream of Anne before she passes. Oh, no, jeez, no, don't do this.
Yeah. So Anne has to memorize her Lord's Prayer.
Yep.
Go up and do that. And then we get this moment of Anne imagining herself as a princess, and having this wonderful moment because Anne is Anne, and this is the kind of thing she does. Does she remind you of anyone?
Maria Teresa.
A little bit.
Queen Isabel of Spain.
Could be something more closer to home to anime and other anime being made at the same time.
Joan of Arc? No.
Remember in the Castle of Cagliostro when Clarice was married? And she wears a long white dress with a crown.
Oh.
Yeah. Which Miyazaki was making at the exact same time.
Oh, interesting. Because when I saw it, I felt I didn't feel Cagliostro.
No.
I was thinking about it. I'm like, wow, that's really kind of very Spanish looking.
Yes,
I'm like, this is very interesting. Like, the War of the Spanish Succession.
Yes.
I'm like, I don't know why this looks like this, but holy crap, that makes much more sense now.
And we do find later that Anne loves like Arthurian legends,
Right.
and that whole thing. So this is also probably sort of reminiscent of that as well. Although I totally agree with the Spanish influence too.
Yeah,
So
but I
it's
mean,
really
if that's Cagliostro,
I mean,
right
it looks.
there,
I was like, that
absolutely
that
makes sense.
looks like
Holy
Clarice
cow.
to me. I don't know. And it could be one of those things where wonder Takahata walked past a desk and saw that, or Miyazaki walked past a desk and saw that, and was like, "Oh, that's a good idea." Who knows?
I mean, we know that character types never show up in anything that's like anything to do with either one of those two ever again.
No.
They do unique characters forever, always. Matthew's mustache looks nothing like anything Miyazaki ever does.
No, exactly. And actually, Kid Anime Panda in chat mentioned something that is also actually very true, which I think folks haven't noticed. Anyway, Anne sitting in this position is very much like Nausicaa sitting in the cubbyhole in her room in Nausicaa. Remember that one shot where she's sitting there?
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. And I suspect, and this is not the only time Anne does this, and I now think that shot in Nausicaa is a bit of a callback to Anne, because it is very much that same sort of moment. Yeah, yeah.
Which, I mean, as the supreme sensei that you are these things callbacks, or are they like, my gosh, that was really effective where I wanted that in the story?
Yeah. I mean,
so it's not like, hey, remember that thing I did?
Yeah.
As much as it is, that was so great the way that was done there.
Yeah.
I'm just going to use it again because it really highlights what I want out of that story.
Yeah, I think it's both. I think there's a long history of a sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge between anime creators and the audience.
Okay.
Anime creators saying, remember that thing I did? I remember the thing I did too. And,
Buy my manga.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Hey.
And pulling in those things as kind of a we're all in this together kind of an aspect, especially back in at this period in anime history where otakudom was not a popular thing.
Yeah.
When being in the anime industry was not a popular thing. Like this was if you're an otaku or if you're an animator, like you were a part of a select group. And so
a shunned group.
Yeah, very much so. If you've seen Otaku no video, you know what they portrayed there.
Sumimasen, boku wa otaku desu.
The drunk guy coming up with what are you setting her up for a cartoon movie?
Oh man.
Which was Nausicaa, speaking of. They were waiting for. But yeah, I think there's a certain judge, but also like, these folks are professionals, like Takahata, Miyazaki, the others. Like they know when something works, they know to use that thing, and to go back and use that absolutely.
Yeah, because I wonder about that for a lot of anime where it's not. I don't know who's behind Science Saru, who's the JC staff. I don't know that there's some of the way that the movement of the characters goes. That is same studio, different anime, or different anime, different studios.
Yeah.
But like some of the move that the characters, engage in, some of the scene sort of choices of the way that the camera's positioned.
Yeah.
It's like, are you borrowing stuff? Is it something that you did before that was great, or is this the acknowledgement that it's like that was great?
Yeah.
And we're gonna do that too because it fits just that right way. It's like, oh.
I saw a video recently by the Kanipa Effect about the anime style of Genshin Impact, and how they very much follow the anime aesthetic, You know, both in terms of obviously like the character designs, but also in terms of like how characters move, how the camera moves, so forth and so on. If somebody will come in and we'll get this, pause as the fist is moving, kind of a thing, all that classic stuff. And he addressed the fact that a lot of people are like, well, they're just aping anime. They're just kind of copying anime. And he goes, this is what artists do. Is that they take something, they think this is cool, and then they find out how to use that effectively in their own stories. Right. This is a matter of finding out what works and moving forward. And also, he did a great job of showing clips. There's a clip from it, I forget what it is, of a guy on a bicycle. And he has this crazy, it's anime clip, guy on a bicycle, and there's a shot of him screeching to a halt in the bicycle, and it's just like the motorcycle in Akira, screeching to the halt.
Yeah.
And it's clearly like, it's an awesome shot, so let's use that awesome shot.
Right.
And yes, it is a reference to Akira, but it's also, this looks cool. Let's do more cool things.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I guess, there is a certain element to the fact that it's like the people that do the cutting edge, cool stuff. There's a lot of very cool stuff that people have done. It's really hard to like break new ground on. You've got a guy on a bicycle and he's gonna, you're gonna do a mountain biking anime, and it's all about professional mountain biking. You have a guy goes around a corner and screeches it, just like Akira. It's not because it's Akira. It's because that has already been done, and there's no way to do the thing that you want to do because somebody's already done it. You're like, damn it.
Yeah, so, you're not gonna do that better.
Yeah, right. It's just you could just do it because the thing needs to be done, and it's perfect for what you're doing it for.
Exactly.
Sort of like I've noticed with a lot of, I think it was recreators that use these really insane deep bass kind of noises for fight scenes. After I saw that, I'm like, oh my god, a fight scene is really plussed by having that. It's like the THX thing where it's just like it's this thumping deep noise. And then I started noticing that noise showed up in other shows, not the same studio. And I'm like, that's because that noise was exactly perfect for what they were doing. And now it shows up other places in similar kind of fight scenes where it's like, that's the thing you needed for that.
And as Q Anime Panda is pointing out in chat, it's like the Itano Circus. Right? All the missiles. Like, yes! Keep doing that. Like, that looks awesome.
It's great. So that's been invented. It's like, damn it, I can't do anything plussing that one. Really.
The Obari pose. Totally. It's just a thing. Okay, so Anne comes back to reality a bit, and we get this lovely foreshadowing as she looks out her window across the way to a house in the distance.
Yes, we do.
Yes, who contains a certain someone that we will see.
A bosom friend? Would it be someone who could be a bosom friend?
Wouldn't that be nice?
It would.
If only it would. But yeah, that is 6 episodes. 3 episodes up through episode 6 of Akage no Anne of Green Gables. So, what were your thoughts about the storytelling so far at this point? Like, did it feel smooth? Did anything feel kind of off at this point?
Well, again, I so wish I remembered the bits and pieces and whether I had ever like read the entire Green Gables in secondary school, middle school.
I think it's one of those
because I'd love to compare those.
Yeah, it's one of those stories that for a lot of people, I think a lot of people think they read it, but they probably watched like bits and pieces and so forth and so on, or they read a chapter, right? It's like, it's hard.
Well, I think I had said before, it's like I remember in middle school, we had this thing, it looked like a dictionary. And it was an anthology of like the great works of literature. And it's like, so we read parts of all kinds of stuff I don't remember.
Norton Anthology?
Anymore. Was it? Is that what that thing was?
The Norton Anthology of English Literature, I know, is a thing. But
it could easily have been, because I mean, it was freaking book. And we read I think we read all of Great Expectations, but before we read that, I think that was like 8th grade. But in like 6th grade, we had this, and we read a snippet of Great Expectations. So it's like we read parts, and I don't know how they chose bits and pieces, but I know Anne of Green Gables was pretty damn likely one of them. So, but I don't have enough of it in my head to compare these two.
Yep.
I love the way that this is told. I love and again, as I had said before, I love that sort of pastoral aspect. It's like I get all this rich, beautiful scenery going on, as well as I have much visual stimulus for it. It's by no means an action adventure show.
No.
Even though we're in the wilds of Prince Edward Island, it's not an action adventure show. It's only got really some poignant moments of like heartrending tenderness, some notable moments of like a buildup of anxiety, but not enough that it's just like, oh, I got to step away from this. Just oh boy, I'm feeling like what's going to happen next. It's like everything is dealable within its time frame and its space, and it's like so it's been a lovely story so far. Again, if you hadn't recommended it, I'm not sure I ever would have run across it. Not for bad reasons, but just because I'm watching One Punch Man. Let's watch Anne of Green Gables. You're like, let's just dial this down a little bit here.
Well, and everyone's backlog is insanely long. Even if you wanted to watch something, prioritizing is difficult.
Seeing the Harlock Saga, the first episode of Harlock Saga, it's like that's because there was a brief moment in time where I'm like, okay, I've caught up to Anne, so now I'm up to episode 9, and now I've got this like half an hour window. Let's watch Harlock Saga before we get back into the queue and start churning through all the stuff. Girlfriend, like all those ones. Trying to catch up on Aquatope of White Sand. Like catch up. Got things to do. I only can watch a little bit of one thing I want to see.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Yep. It's one of the advantages, back in the day of having the show on television, where it's like, it's going to be there, and so you got to tune in to watch it if you want to watch it.
Yeah.
Very different experience than these days, but yeah.
Which, remembering those weekly shows when something happened and you couldn't watch that weekly show, and like the idea that it would be in syndication and would come back 10 years later was not exactly a heartwarming moment.
No.
Where like, oh my goodness, did anybody in class see this show? They can tell me what happened, because I could see next week. I don't have a family dinner or something event happening, so can you tell me what happened?
Nope. Yeah, different times.
Back in the day.
Exactly, back in the day. Cool. That is Anne of Green Gables episodes 4 through 6.
We took longer with 4 through 6 this time than we did 1 through 3.
It's pretty impressive. It's an impressive show. There's a lot to talk about.
By the time we get like 47 through 50,
oh
it'll be like a
man,
6-hour conversation.
There will be a lot to talk about, in fairness, if we get that far. We'll see.
We're good. I mean, is there a choice to get off the train? No, we have to go all the way to 50.
Yes, there is. If we ever get there, there'll be plenty to talk about. We'll see.
Episode 25, and we'll pick this up 2 years from now. Okay.
I wanted to at least get this far into Anne of Green Gables, because I think this is a great stopping point. If you do want to get into Anne of Green Gables, episodes 1 through 6 are a great sort of little mini arc where you get through Anne. Anne is now accepted. She is now Anne of Green Gables. You have a sense of what's going to come next. But if, as a viewer, you get to this point, you can be like, okay, cool, I can move on to something else. I can come back, and like this is a great stopping point as well for Anne of Green Gables. Because when you come back, you're like, okay, well, I know where she is. I know how I know where everyone is. You're not in the middle of some plot arc.
Certainly it is a satisfactory. She's now seated in her place. Mm-hmm. Now it will be the events that will revolve around her as a resident of Green Gable, and the things that will happen to the community around her. So I can see that. I can see that easily.
And how well she's able to adjust to some of the expectations and things in that time.
Oh, and also how well others adjust to
exactly.
her.
Yes. Yes, because not everyone is as observant as Marilla is about Anne's particular psychology and such, and Anne can be a lot.
Yes, when people make offhand comments about and things happen.
Yes, they do.
They do.
Oh boy.
Certainly do.
Exactly.
Apologies all around.
Hopefully. Cool. We're gonna take a quick break. Be back in just a moment to talk about the news and such. We'll be back then.
Eat.
Hello, everyone. We are back.
Guten Abend, alles. Wie geht es Ihnen?
Sure, that thing.
Sure. Indeed. Well, it's Oktoberfest time.
That works.
Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome. Im Cabaret. Never mind. Going on.
I just know Anime Man. That's all I know.
If you don't know show tunes, there's anime show tunes.
Oh
We've
boy,
all
is there.
watched Idolmaster. We've all
Exactly,
watched Love
yeah.
Live. There's
What was that
showtimes.
one? I keep forgetting where the girl is an amazing dancer that opens her mouth at the end of the episode.
Oh my goodness!
That was so
Yeah,
great.
I watched that one where she becomes their dance coach
Yeah.
because she could do all the moves, but when they're in the airport and she started singing, they're like, "Oh, good lord!" But you can move. Yes. I'm like 2 episodes into that. Jeez, that's
Yeah.
somewhere in the queue again.
Yeah, oh yeah, yep, I hear that. Oh boy.
Yeah, right now I'm at 12,808 episodes. Almost 1,500 series and almost 1,000 completed titles.
Wow, nice. You are far ahead of me.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like I'm at that scale where now it says instead of like so many days of like watching, I'm at 204 days
204 days watched?
worth of like anime watched.
Yeah.
204. I'm like, oh my goodness,
Yeah, you're
I've got
way
a-
ahead of me.
I've got a problem.
You're way ahead of me.
I just really like anime.
Yeah, I'm only 93. So I'm way behind.
Well, let's sit down and catch you up to 204.
Hey, sounds good to me.
Just
So many
at
other things to do.
23 minutes an episode to
Yeah.
equal.
Yeah.
It's like,
Mhm.
it's a lot of time.
A lot of time. A lot of time.
Yeah.
Gotta keep up. Gotta keep up to date.
I'm sure there's hikikomori out there that probably are like really far beyond that. If you're a shut-in, you got nothing
Exactly. Yeah. And if you're shut in, you're lucky. Wait.
Exactly.
no.
Yeah.
Not quite how that works.
All the ramen you can eat, nobody to talk
Right.
to, just you can watch anime 24/7. Boy, this sounds awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who needs people?
People just get in the way of anime.
Exactly. Right. 2D is best.
Exactly. 2D waifu? All the way.
Hey. Gonna get a body pillow for your daughter? Just go right for it.
Jeez. Wow. Can I get a Deku Dakimakura, please?
Who? For my
No.
daughter. Sure. You hear that?
I hear something.
Boy, it's a slow news week. So we're just gonna talk through the news this week. We don't have a lot to talk about here. We're not even gonna do an also this week because it's kind of all also this week. Not a huge amount to go into, but we will dig in as best we can. To give you an idea, the top news story that I could find is that there's more details about the upcoming Blackrock Shooter anime. What can I say? So that is coming up. Blackrock,
Well, if you're a big fan of Blackrock Shooter, that's awesome news.
of course, yes.
I don't think I've seen any of it, so I don't really know.
Yeah. So Blackrock Shooter, and I actually have a YouTube video about this. It is completely wrong. As it turns out, I got it completely incorrect in the YouTube video. It was an illustration originally of this character named Blackrock Shooter, posted on Pixiv back in 2007. And then there was a Hatsune Miku song called Blackrock Shooter, inspired by that piece of art, done by Supercell, which was hugely successful. Like one of the biggest Hatsune Miku songs out there.
Wow.
And then that spawned an OVA in 2010, 2012 a TV anime, and then spin-off manga and games and figures of the character. And so there's this Hatsune Miku sort of strong connection to it, but it's not like originally a Hatsune Miku thing. So this is an adaptation of Blackrock Shooter. Blackrock Shooter Dawnfall, excuse me. And what's interesting is that it is being directed by Tensho. The eponymous name. also known as Motoki Tanaka, excuse me,
Yeah.
who's done a lot of anime. Staff in tons of things. Azumanga Daioh, Key Animation, Key Animator on Little Busters, Ninja Nonsense, Shaman King, Tears of
The
Tiara,
current
Stratus
Shaman
4.
King or the old,
I
the other one?
believe the old Shaman King, because he also did ROD the TV.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
Shaman King TV, that looks like. Yeah, I think it's the original one.
Okay.
Yep, it is. And then director on, let's see here, Rewrite, Grisala, a little show called Azure Lane.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and a bunch of other stuff. And so he's directing it at Biburi Animation Studios, which is his own studio. The writer of Psycho-Pass and Magical Girl Spec Ops Asuka is writing and overseeing the scripts.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
That's getting interesting.
In collaboration with another writer on the writer on Psycho-Pass Enters to the System and Psycho-Pass 3. As I understand, Psycho-Pass 2 is one that everyone hates. But I'm not sure. And they're also getting one of the designers from Psycho-Pass to work on it. And one of the designers for Azure Lane to work on it as well. So it looks like a sort of a mashup of those two teams will be working on it. So very interesting.
Okay.
Also worth noting that Tensho was an animator on very important key animation on the final episode of Shattered Angels. Yes.
Which is still on my list to watch.
You haven't seen Shattered Angels?
No, I have not.
Oh.
I actually have that in my note function in my phone that every time I pull something up, it's Shattered Angels. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I gotta watch that.
It's an experience. So yeah, so that's coming. Cool. Looking forward to it.
Yay!
Yay.
More anime.
More anime. Also more manga. The first and 29th volumes of My Hero Academia manga and the first volume of Demon Slayer hit the New York Times monthly graphic books and manga bestseller list from early
Awesome.
October. The 29th volume of Academia was at number 2. First volume of Academia at number 6. And first volume of Demon Slayer at number 11. So good for
Okay.
them.
When did the New York Times start adding that in? Has it
quite
been
a
a
while
long
ago.
time and I've just not
Yeah,
noticed?
it's been around.
Okay.
Actually, I take that back. October 2019.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so it is relatively
Yeah,
recent. Okay.
I thought it would have been around longer than that. That is my mistake.
I was to say, I'm glad to see that is something that they're tracking. Good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a big bonus.
More information. Absolutely. Speaking of Demon Slayer, Funimation is going to began streaming 2 Demon Slayer anime specials a couple days ago, back on Thursday. They're basically recompilations of some of the arcs in the anime with some new footage added.
Okay.
So
Okay.
to bridge the gap between like the movies and the new things coming on, these recompilation films were made. They made a total of 5 special, which aired on 5 separate nights on Fuji TV back in September.
Wow.
Because people need more Demon Slayer.
If Mugen Train taught us nothing.
Exactly, absolutely. One of them actually aired in theaters in a limited screening run way back in the day, back in March of 2019. So they're streamed both in Japanese and in English dubs, Japanese dubs,
Nice.
if you're interested in that. So those are available now on Funimation if you're interested in that.
Cool.
Yeah. Little worrying, Maya Sakamoto announced she's stepping down from her role in her next stage musical due to health reasons.
Yeah, I heard that.
Going to be a title character in the musical. She'd already delayed a stage reading of a short story from last December to March due to poor physical health. Don't know exactly what's going on there. If you're curious, she was Hitomi in Vision of Escaflowne, Mari Illustrious Makanami in Rebuild of Evangelion, Haruhi in Oran, CL in Black Butler, Shinobu in the Monogatari series, Merlin in Seven Deadly Sins, Shiki Ryogi in Garden of Sinners, and Ruler in Fate Apocrypha. Yeah. One of the big voice actresses out there. So hope she's doing well. Hope she can recover.
Yeah, I hope it's something that just rest and relaxation can restore,
Exactly. And
not something more serious.
here's hoping. And then finally, Crunchyroll added the Demon Slayer film.
Yep.
So you can go there to watch the demon. That's all I got, folks. Like that's the level of the news this week.
Lots of good news concerning health issue.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not bad.
Yeah.
That's a good news week.
Exactly.
You know?
Yes.
There's not anybody reported, beloved mangaka has passed away.
Right.
Something terrible has happened, or the crash in the anime market, or hey, I'll take good news.
Yeah.
I'll take good news along the way.
Exactly. I'm actually scrolling back through the news items to see if anything jumps out. Right Stuff did reach their pre-order goal for Aria. Is it Aria in Masterpiece? The Aria manga.
They are okay.
I think it's Aria
I've seen
manga
one
in
episode
Masterpiece.
of the Aria.
Yeah, the anime. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where again, it's they will basically release this. It will be made available, and they're done. It's not going to be a big release out. It's a reprint of all 7 volumes. Yeah, Aria the Masterpiece, special collector's edition of the original manga.
Okay.
It'll be the final run to their point. And their condition for reprints was that each volume needed to receive 900 pre-orders, which happened. More pre-orders available for the next couple of days. So if you want it, jump on that, so you can get more of those. Estimated release of May 31st. Anything else interesting?
I'm still waiting for more news about what is going on with Funimation, Crunchyroll, and Sony.
Yeah, I hear that.
Because the Jobless Reincarnation, it was on Crunchyroll the first season. The second season is only on Funimation.
Interesting.
So it's like, hi, you guys are the same company now, basically.
Yeah.
Can we get on merging with the catalogs here?
Well,
please?
And that's the issue is I'm sure they are now, but their contracts aren't.
Well, I mean, I was like, do I do the free trial or do I just pay for Funimation for the basic $5.99 and just call it good? I'm like, but I'm already paying for Crunchyroll. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder how many of those contracts can carry over.
Yeah.
Because basically, if Funimation buys Crunchyroll, then those contracts come under Funimation, right? It's not like they are now one entity, so presumably those contracts could fold over. The other question, of course, is just the technical side. Like, who knows what needs to be done to move things from the one system to the next? They may not be compatible at all. Who knows?
Yeah, Funimation uses Adobe Flash, and Crunchyroll
Silverlight
uses Java.
No. Oh God. There was actually a thing about that recently.
Just be hellish to try.
What was it?
Just like, ooh.
Yeah, there was something about that where there was some service. It was like an anime streaming service or something, and it ran on Microsoft Silverlight, or it was Flash or something, and it was around for a long time, and they just kept it up, and then just support for that ended. And so you can't load that site. It just does not function anymore. And it's just like, it's sorry. It's got it could have, but you can't rewrite that from scratch. Yeah, you're done.
Gosh.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, technology, whole complex thing. My students are learning that right now at work. They're trying to, they're realizing that I got a question this week along the lines of, of these two technologies, which one should I use? And the answer was, it depends. For the vast majority of things, there is no one right answer for all situations. It's complicated.
See, this is why you need the grand unified theory where everything works on everything all the time about all aspects.
There's a great XKCD, which we've probably talked about before. The guy is saying, we have 15 we have 15 different formats. We need to standardize. Next panel. We have 16 formats.
Awesome.
Yeah. That's how it works, pretty much. Oh,
Keep
dear.
moving forward. It's 19 and like 10 of them are absolutely dead formats,
Yeah,
but there's still something out
Yeah,
there.
right. We'll
need
standardize.
somebody-
We'll standardize on one format.
We need to do this entire site and this entire structure in COBOL.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
I think was this an XKCD? There's some programming joke. There are two things I know for a fact about programming 10 years from now. For a fact, the dominant language will be something that nobody has heard of, and there will still be people writing COBOL.
Yep. Because there's still systems out there that are using it somewhere in time.
Exactly.
They got it Y2K compliant, and then it's just been running ever since.
Keep going. Well, think about how. Excuse me. Think about how many gas stations, service stations, that are still running some DOS system,
Yep.
right? To handle all their orders, and it's like they're running a razor thin margins. They can't just suddenly upgrade all their systems. This still works technically on their 8088s or whatever.
Well, I mean, how many like power substation systems are still like somebody's accessing a terminal that's still a green screen with a monitor still connected to the actual keyboard? Like, awesome.
Tom Scott on YouTube did a video on the most useful model train in the world.
Okay.
It is a model train set up in Germany, of course, and it's used to train people who manage switching stations on trains.
Okay.
Right? And they set it up in this little room, and they have both the original levers to train on that you would use. They're actual mechanical levers, and they operate into the model trains. They have the 1950s style consoles, all like battleship gray with little lights in it and all this kind of stuff, and then computer monitors.
Where they like scratched out property of the third Reich.
No, not quite.
Like, oh, hey, cool.
Not quite. But they train people on this because they think there are still some switches out there in the middle of nowhere that are the old mechanical physical levers, and you need to, in case somebody calls you out, you know how to handle those. And they said the thing is, there are having a model train has advantages over having a CGI model because you can literally like lean over and look and like stand up and do things like that the way you would in real life to see, there's a train coming around, and it is more accurate to the experience of being there.
Oh, interesting.
So they keep the physical toy train going all through that for that exact reason. Which is kind of cool. But yeah, that's it.
I wonder if Japan does that, because you figure from there, all of their little trunk lines that go off to different places and itty bitty spots. I mean, what was the story that we had just seen not that long ago about the train line that serviced one girl to get her back and forth to school until she graduated? It's like, even though they shut that line down, I'm gonna bet you they're looking at the upgrades of the systems. They're like, stick with the switches and levers on that one.
Yeah, exactly.
As soon as she graduates, we won't need anything high tech. So it's like, I'm sure there's places that are same kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Like really antiquated. Still functional, still good, still good, good repair.
Absolutely.
But antiquated.
Yeah. That's what they were saying in Germany is that those will eventually be upgraded, but if they still function, especially if it's in the middle of nowhere and everything is fine, why put that?
You don't need to fix what's not broken. So keep going if you have to.
Yeah. And Man and Jay are talking in the chat about one of the interesting things right now with manga is how it's getting harder and harder to find manga in general to buy because of the printing shortages and the supply chain shortages. Yeah. And it's like it was hard enough to get manga because of the limited audience. It's a great point. It's like good luck. Like it's hard to get that now. So maybe pushing more folks to digital. Who knows?
Which, I mean, if you have a good reader, something that's not going to strain your eyes, that's a very decent option. Because I think we've talked about it over the months about how like such and such manga just hit its 10 millionth printing. It's like now that we have a fully functional global market, supply chain issues aside, now that domestic market of like millions of prints also has to factor in these other spots around the world that are ordering millions their own. It's like, oh boy, a lot of trees.
Yep.
A whole lot of trees.
A lot of trees.
Yeah.
It's tough. And it's also, you think about it from the publisher's perspective, right? Like, if you're licensing the Maiko, manga, the Maiko anime from this past season.
Yeah.
That manga, that's not going to get, 20 million, readers. So you got this small audience. It's like, okay, and so are you telling them they have to print, 10,000 copies of that for that audience and manage and make sure that they have enough and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
It's just putting it out digitally and saying, hey, you want it, get it, but we don't have to potentially lose a lot of money on this thing. We just license it, put it out there, and see what,
Well, I mean, when you've got press lines, I told you I got the Fox's Wedding. It's a compendium of like yokai stories, and they're finally off to print. They finished editing. The artist who's doing all the illustrations, all of that's done. All of the I think it was Kickstarter. All the Kickstarter pluses for sponsorship, that's all done. They're getting ready to package parts of it. All this stuff. He was in queue for a printer, and it's like he hit his target to get the book made, but he still had to get in queue because exactly what you're saying. It's like, do we want to do 10,000 run of this, or we've got a sub license for the next volume of One Piece. So your 10,000, that's great. We're going to get to it. You could digitally do it now, or you're going to wait 6 months because we have to run 300 million copies of this One Piece thing. It's like...
Well, and I spend a lot of time with like the role-playing stuff and like board game Kickstarters where it's like, you have that and, okay, now you have to get in line with whoever is going to print your boards, print your rule books, get all the pieces together, make those custom little, player pieces, put those all into the boxes. All of that is a whole supply chain that, you better hope all that works, and that you don't have any problems there.
Any hiccup in that? So whoever's printing your boards, if they've got a queue of like, Milton Bradley, we're subcontracting for them, and we're running, a trillion monopoly. So you're like 400th in line, and then your box lithograph person's like, oh yeah, you're like number 2 in line. So you have those boxes next week.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so you could have any bits of that in your hands and then have years to wait for the remaining part.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Oh God, killing me.
Yeah, there are stories of role-playing companies where they would have like basements and garages full of just like the boxes, because the boxes would come in. You got to put them somewhere.
Yeah,
and then wait 3 months.
For the rest of it.
Yeah, exactly. And then
which, contrary to popular belief, storing anything paper goods in just general storage is a tremendously bad idea. You need like climate control, so that the glues, the inks, and just generally things don't get moldy.
Yep.
Because you lose those things. It's like,
and then your customers
we have 50,000 boxes. We lost 10,000 of them. Now we've got all this extra other stuff.
But your customers are very happy and understanding of that, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, I imagine that's why you disconnect phone lines. You're like, oh, there's no physical phone, just the email.
I remember reading a story, I forget what author it was. They had a bunch of things. They, wrote a book, couldn't sell it. Wrote another book, couldn't sell it. I think it was their 5th book. They finally sold. It went to a local publisher, local printer, and the day before the book was meant to go out, the warehouse burned to the ground. And every copy of their book was just like,
Sometimes you receive a clear sign. If the other books didn't make it, The warehouse burns down. Obviously, there's like this printing of the Necronomicon is not meant to be.
Yeah. Let's see here. I'm not doing Hobby Hopper this month. I'm actually doing some writing, but it's not really a Hobby Hopper thing. Writing of both fiction and role-playing stuff. Which is fun. But what are you doing this month, Jay? I'm curious. And then I would not be surprised to hear that Academia is now selling One Piece in late 2020. That it is not surprising in bursts. You know, a lot of the shonen manga will have rises and falls, where like One Piece obviously sells really well, but sometimes that kind of fall, something else will come up and overtake it for a little while. So that wouldn't surprise me a lot. Homemade root beer. That is awesome, Jay.
Ooh.
Yeah. Love that. Homemade soda is a lot of fun.
That reminds me. I have not had a sarsaparilla.
Ooh.
I don't even know how long.
Yeah.
Or a birch beer.
Yes. Birch beer is the thing. I like ginger beer too.
Yes.
Ginger beer is very nice.
Which ginger beer, Fresh Market in Roanoke, you can get ginger beer. There is a manufacturer called Krabby's that makes an adult ginger beer.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But it's ginger beer. The last time I think I had a birch beer, it was Pennsylvania Dutch birch beer.
Ooh,
and I was
nice.
like somewhere outside, Philadelphia, like where the family farm is and stuff, like Westchester, and went to the store and was just like, and it's like the can had all like the Pennsylvania Dutch, the little designs and stuff like on the quilts and the barns and stuff. And I was like, birch beer!
Nice.
So,
yeah, and man, you are fortunate. And that is awesome, because I have absolutely had new manga yellow. I have some on the shelves right now that's sadly yellowed in my ownership of it. So I believe you. Like I'm sure it doesn't happen like all the time for everybody. And I certainly have some that haven't yellowed, but it does happen for me, for some. Which is,
other than like leaving manga in the sunlight or somebody who smokes and there's are there environmental factors that yellow that? So it's like if you live in an air conditioned house where the humidity is relatively good during the summer, it's relatively dry in the winter, is yellowing worse, better? You know what I mean? It's like I wonder what affects that, where you could somehow reduce the chances of it.
I also get the sense that paper stock is not as consistent as people would have us believe.
Yeah.
And so, printing one is getting a slightly different paper than printing two, and so forth and so on. So we're just getting different qualities of paper as time goes on. And obviously not like massively different, but just slight differences in pulping and so forth and so on that have an effect. Yeah.
Well, I know with the Showa series that I'm reading from Shigeru Mizuki, that the feeling of the pages is slightly different. A friend of mine lent me Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yeah.
Love those. Literally, the textural difference between the two is like really markedly different. Like the Scott Pilgrim one, it feels more like it's weird to say for a manga, higher quality book page.
Oh yeah.
And then Shigeru's is just like more of like a manga book page.
Yeah.
Where it's that kind of feels grainier.
Well, it's think of like an American comic page, right?
Yeah.
Like that is a much thicker, much better material. Partly because it has to carry color.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. They use different things. And again, Scott Pilgrim is a Canadian, I think. It's Canadian, so they're using Canadian printing. This
is very interesting. I can't imagine the prohibitive expense if you used all like the Georgia Pacific 10-pound white like printer paper to print all of manga.
Yeah.
There would be no tree left on earth.
I'm trying to think. Let me see. My Akira. Nope. No, that's definitely like the standard manga page, and that's actually fairly yellow now that I look at it. Yeah.
Do you have like a North American print of anything that has it yellowed?
No.
Like, I know some of my paperback, like U.S. print Penguin Publishing, some of my cheap paperbacks, they kind of yellow.
Sure.
Because that's, it's not exactly the highest quality.
Right. Okay, so we're gonna peel back the curtain here.
Oh.
So here's Akira next to Nanjing, the Burning City, a comic book about Nanjing.
Nanjing. Aha.
Yes, it's light and fun.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Single volume or multi-volume?
Single volume. So let's find something that's not horrible.
Ooh, I would like to borrow that at some point too.
Yeah, it's really impressive. So there we have that, and then for comparison, there's Akira. So you can see significantly yellower. It's more dingy than yellowed, but definitely not crisp whites.
Interesting.
There. But, I mean, you can feel it. This feels almost like newsprint. I think it is newsprint, thick newsprint.
Yeah.
And this is definitely like the glossier, thicker paper.
Right.
Yeah.
Sort of like a hardbound book versus a paperback.
I think of another good example. Do I have? Well, here's an even better comparison. Look at that. Okay, it's interesting.
Okay.
Let's look at Watchmen. This is Watchmen from looks like a 1987 print of Watchmen, and it's pretty yellowed actually.
Interesting.
And I'll pull out. It's not as yellowed on the pages themselves. And again, gotta be careful with Watchmen. Definitely not those.
So it's the exposure to light and humidity, obviously, and atmospheric effect that's getting the edges yellowed.
Yeah, so we definitely got some yellowing on the borders. Fairly white. I mean, it's fairly. I would say the centers of those are this is the middle of the page, so less yellowed the book, and obviously pretty bright in the actual panels.
Yeah.
With Rorschach there.
Interesting.
Did I just? Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah. And here's naked. No.
Yeah, I mean, Rorschach especially, like some of those panels are like, that's what I'm looking at. Okay, But yeah, so yeah, it does depend, and again, this is late '80s. Comics are not quite what they are now. So this is definitely like glossy paper, definitely thicker paper. But
it's very interesting because my James O'Barr, my Crow series that I have, I've got several of the renditions that he did of the stuff following the Crow, and it's all done on like almost like magazine paper, where it's really glossy and there's no place for it to like yellow.
Yeah,
so the graphic novels are like really well done. I mean, hallelujah.
yeah, I have one or two that are clearly archival. Like I have some Mobius stuff,
right?
Whereas like everyone knows who Mobius is. Everyone knows archival quality.
Yeah.
Treat this carefully. So it is different. Yeah. Yeah. Let me talk about something I like.
Anime?
Yes, anime. And everything's kind of
cupcakes.
I mean, I like cupcakes.
Yeah.
But
who doesn't?
One second. For some reason, this camera. I have to be like right here to actually be on camera for this. So let me adjust things a little
Camera
bit.
one, camera two,
Camera one.
camera two.
I just kind of need. Okay, what we're gonna do here is just shrink things up a little bit, so it's a little. Yeah, that's more reasonable. Okay, we'll make that happen. This is gonna be interesting. I also need to turn off the audio on that. Okay. Welcome to Brent's Anime Recommendation Corner, where I talk about anime that I just love. And today I'm talking about Gundam Evolve. This is a series of short films in the Gundam universe made by Sunrise, sort of in celebration of the Gundam universe. Each one is set in a different Gundam series, and it's about a different Gundam series. And each one is a side story or otherwise reflection on things that happened in the story. The first one is about original Gundam, and it is basically about Amuro sitting in the RX-78-2, waiting to blast off, and having a moment where he reflects back on all the things he's gone through over the course of Mobile Suit Gundam. It's sort of this montage thing of Amuro sitting there, and you hear him breathing, and then you see this imagery of all of these things happening over the course of the show, and all of the kind of trauma that he's experienced over the course of the show, and it helps to kind of contextualize everything that Amuro is going through, which is really cool. And then episode 3, if I recall correctly, episode 3 is an all CGI short film in the G Gundam universe of Domon Kash doing Tai Chi in a Gundam on top of a building, because that's G Gundam, and going around and doing crazy things there. All CGI, which is odd because G Gundam has no CGI in it. And just a fun, ridiculous little storyline. How long is it? 3 minutes of Domon Kashu and a surprise character showing up there. While Gundam Evolve Episode 2 is set in, if I recall this correctly, so I think it is. I may be wrong. No, there's another one. There's another one set in the Zeta Gundam universe, involving a particular famous character in the Gundam universe, and kind of backfilling and explaining why that character is so different in Zeta Gundam versus in other places where we've seen them. And then one of the things that really attracted me to Gundam Evolve is episode 7, which features a character breaking into a facility and doing kind of breaking and entering and kind of terroristy things, which makes sense when you discover it is Hiro Yui who is breaking in to break out the Gundam Wing Zero from Endless Waltz. And this came out in the early 2000s. So it's telling kind of the side story within the Gundam Wing universe. So it's really neat seeing Sunrise go back to its earlier properties and tell stories of kind of connective tissue, of pulling things together and coming back and using the same voice actors, all the same voice actors coming back to voice those characters, which is awesome. Wow. And also filling in some details that fans had wondered about why things were the way they were in some cases, and helping people to know what's going on. And we get to kind of come back to these characters a little bit in a way that, it's hard to find, it's hard to have time and experience with some of the areas. We generally don't get new anime in, the G Gundam timeline or the Gundam X timeline or whatever. And this is Sunrise going back and just giving us a little bit of extra, a little bit of something else to enjoy in that universe. It's always appreciated when a studio gives us something like that. So that's Gundam Evolve. A total of, I believe, 15 short films in various Gundam universes, telling fun little stories in that, and a lot of fun. It is, again, early 2000s CGI. They're trying their best. Some of them are little clunky. They have some issues. Totally fair. I say this in the context of it's just fun having something else in those universes. But yeah, that's Gundam Evolve. I just really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun.
Put aside the clunky CGI and just enjoy the story.
Exactly. Yep. Let it be. That is that. And then you can talk a bit about there are things that happened this in anime history recently. And you know what? Let's change things up a little bit. I'm gonna see if I can do this.
We'll talk about everything that didn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. How easy would it be?
We've got the rest of life to do this, right?
Right, exactly.
What is that?
What is what? Oh yeah, this is wrong. 1 second.
Oh, what's going on here?
1 moment. There we go. Sorry about that. Click the wrong button.
Oh, we were in an art gallery for a
Yes,
second.
exactly.
Cool.
So if I go up here, we are changing things in the moment. That is a...
now we're at the cafe at the art gallery.
Exactly, yes.
Oh.
We can do that. And pop that up here and move it down here. And then move this. How much do I want to do this is the question. So I want to try reconfiguring all of the This Week in Anime Histories so that it's both of us on there, which would be kind of nice. Yeah, I can do this. Just give us 1 moment. John, talk philosophy for a minute while I do this.
Talk philosophy. Let's talk about how anime and manga responds to the inner child in us as adults, but gives us the appreciation of an adult storyline that helps us find continuity in our lives and also in our imaginations, much like Anne uses her imagination to pull various disparate threads of her experience into one cohesive whole that is both satisfying but not soul-crushing.
That's very interesting, and you're wrong.
Yes. Exactly.
There we go.
Or should I speak, for I know nothing?
There we are. I have no mouth yet, I must scream. There's a reference for you.
I have ice, and you could scream, so therefore we have ice cream. Awesome.
Can you believe they made a video game of I have no mouth but I must scream?
Well, if they could make the raising of Isaac and slay the
True,
spire,
yes.
why not make something
Fair.
crazy too?
Fair. For those curious, I Have No Mouth Yet I Must Scream is a famous science fiction short story about a group of people who are under the thumb of this omnipotent, I think, computer alien thing that has destroyed all of humanity except for 5 people. And one person rebels and is turned into basically this protoplasmic goo thing that has no agency or anything, but just sort of, scooches around on the floor and literally has no mouth and yet wants to scream. It's a very grim dark story.
Made the Abyss meets the planet of Triskelion from the original Star Trek series.
There we go. Absolutely.
I bet 100 quatloos. Oh, cool.
Featuring I remember distinctly watching that episode when I was, young. When you see the outfits the gladiators wear, you're like, ah. Mm-hmm. Ah.
Yes.
Someone has a certain interest. A certain, certain set of
There's
interests.
a target audience involved.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Certain fetishes involved. Oh boy.
Strong women, skin tight outfits.
Strong
Kirk's shirt.
Strong. Well, it's a word.
Physically.
Physically strong. True.
Physically strong. Kirk's shirt torn in a.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes. And 1,000 fan fiction were born. Let's talk about anime history.
Almost as many as when he fights the Gorn, because there's a lot of Gorn stories that are really.
Oh, I can imagine. I never even thought of that.
Yes,
wow.
there are.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Robot Chicken even did a Gorn story that was a little weird.
I'm shocked.
Aren't we all?
So, yes. Welcome to This Week in Anime History, where we talk about things that happened this week in anime history. A week ago, a couple of days ago, was the premiere of the original Super Dimension Fortress Macross in Japan. Back in 1982, which was a little while ago.
It only took 3 years for it to get across the Pacific.
Yeah, not bad, actually, all things considered. There are many stories around that coming over here.
Yes.
Which is, boy, that was a whole long experience. But Macross, obviously one of the big mecha franchises, period. definitely one of the biggest mecha franchises of the 80s, and helped to cement the idea of mecha telling stories that are a little more adult focused, or like young adult focused.
Yeah.
Dealing with actual war and tragedy and death. And
War, romance, death, a lot of subject matter. So as we've gone forward and you've enlightened me with other things, I'm really surprised that Macross is the one that, on in my mind, made the biggest splash in the landscape for all of us in the community. That Gundam didn't.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I would have thought Gundam as a big robot show that would have been like, oh yeah, as soon as that's 2 years in the can, bring it over here. And yet it was Macross that got that.
So the chief Gundam officer has talked about this in the past, and yes, it's an actual title at Sunrise. He's said it was actually very hard to sell Gundam in America because the hero is a pacifist. And
but isn't Hikaru Ichijo is not passionate about going to war?
This is true.
He starts off in the very early parts of it being like, oh, military guys.
Yes. But he is, I would argue Amuro is more directly pacifist. And also, Amuro pushes back more over the course of the series. So he runs away, partway through.
Yeah, Hikaru does not.
Hikaru does not. And Hikaru he gets pretty comfortable being a soldier by about halfway through. Like, he's a pilot. Because I completely agree. Like, they are similar. But I think it was just kind of a bridge too far for Amuro, which I think is fascinating. That was just enough. I have heard that Sunrise, and this is probably more true like in the late 80s, 90s, and so forth, that Sunrise commanded large prices for Gundam. So it could be that it was such a prestigious brand in Japan that they were like, we're not going to give it to you unless you pay up.
Right.
And in other countries, they're like, we have no idea what this is, so no.
Yeah, Harmony Gold didn't have that deep pockets.
Right. Well, and Harmony Gold has a very different, relationship and all that kind of stuff. So.
Well, because it's just so interesting because thinking about all the Macross stuff I have. I have original Bandai stuff a friend of mine brought me from Japan, and I have a ton of Matchbox. They made a ton of Macross stuff for the Robotech series.
Yeah.
I have tons of it. So it's like if you're talking about Gunpla, you're talking about Gundam model kits, and there was a ready market for toys and models and all of that. That Macross, it might not have been the the most paying franchise, but for an anime in the mid '80s, it had a crap ton of toys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I easily could have seen Gundam being like, oh, hell yeah, kids playing with Gundams, not just Valkyries and stuff. Like,
and what's crazy is they had to remake a bunch of that stuff for Robotech. Like, they didn't have the license to the physical toys. They had to take what they knew and then have new toys made just for Robotech based on the Macross molds. So the amount of work there, much less being able to just say, oh yeah, let's just resell those toys, new stickers.
Well, the Bandai stuff I have all focuses on the Valkyries. Like the Battle Pods, the Masters series where the Masters show up, the Bionoid robot and the hover platform. All of those are Matchbox.
Okay.
So it's like you could see kind of the divide. A lot of the Zentradi, Meltrandi battlesuit things, not the pods, but the actual battlesuits with the cannons on the shoulder, those are all Matchbox.
Okay.
None of that's Bandai. So it's like, obviously you had this clear divide where, as you're saying, it's like they had to come up with other toys that were not already on the Bandai production line. It's like, aha.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep. Licensing's a B.
Yeah. But I mean, they did a fine job with it. Wow, wouldn't that have been awesome to have had Gundam precede that? Yeah. All the Gundam stuff available, and then Macross, all the Macross stuff. Those would,
absolutely.
Boy.
I mean, we did get the did you ever see the Robotech dolls?
Like the G.I. Joe figure?
Yeah,
size? Or like...
There was a whole line of Robotech dolls for girls. Of all the Robotech female characters. you know, as you know, dolls like targeted
Barbie
to
style,
yeah, Barbie
Barbie
style.
style.
Yes,
Oh,
marketed to girls. Yeah, that was the
wow.
whole thing. Because
This is gonna
Robotech.
sound weird. I would really love
Oh.
to have a Lin Min made in
Yeah.
a Chinese dress.
Oh, totally.
Boy.
Robotech had a very large female market in Japan, in America. Like a lot of girls tuned in to Robotech, so they're like, "Sure, we'll sell to them." You know.
Well, I mean, again, it covered so many bases. You had good war stuff. Very boyish, very war stuff. And then you had these great love story kind of things. These very like life story kind of stuff that, at the time, again within its milieu, this is targeting marketing at that time in its place.
Right.
You got both sets of audience with all that was made up Macross. So there was a lot of selling points.
What's funny from the just from the benefit of experience, at the time they're like, "Oh, boys don't like romance." Fast forward a couple of decades to all the romance visual novels out there. All the dating sims. It's like, who's buying those? Boys.
Yeah.
Surprising.
Well, I was gonna say, you can't get a season that doesn't have romance.
Yeah.
In anime. And it's like, and it's not just one-sided in that market.
Yep,
It's like
absolutely.
guys like watching a good girlfriend. It might have been stupid as all
Right.
heck, but it's you know what I mean? It's Aho Girl done with the lead character being a guy. It's so that but it's this nice romance, and everybody was perfectly fine watching it. It was not gender specific at all.
Right.
Like
Yeah. And then a little over a decade later, speaking of, we have another major mecha, very different mecha, that premiered on October 4th, 1995, Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Evangeline.
Yes, Evangeline.
I still can't
if you
believe
want-
I thought that was the name for so many years.
If you want to really get the stink eye, go around calling something to like EVA fans, call it Evangelion. And never call it Evangelion, just Evangelion. Just use the soft G, and you'll see the twitch. You'll see the twitch. Sometimes they'll correct you, sometimes they won't. But just keep on calling it Evangelion, and you can drive them insane. Which
Have you done this, Brent?
accidentally before, yes. But yeah, Evangelion's interesting. I was actually talking to somebody today about it because he just watched it for the first time.
Like the whole original series?
The whole original TV series, yeah.
Ooh, okay.
Similar reactions to some of us. But it's fascinating to seeing how much that show was kind of a reaction to super robot tropes. Some of those worked in, and then having the whole sarin gas attack, requiring them to change the ending, and all the various things that happened with Evangelion that made it such a unique experience.
Yeah.
That you will never have anything before like that, because of just all the strange things, and Gainax, almost going out of business and throwing everything at the wall to stick. It's just such a different show.
Well, it's interesting to see that there's a lot of shows, I think, subsequently that pull
Oh yeah,
thematic elements from
very much so.
Evangeline. And
We're gonna have to call that from now on. That's just
Evangeline.
Evangeline.
And I think you're absolutely right. It's just the way that sits in the landscape in its time. It just, you can't make anything like that again, because then everybody's just going to turn and be like, "Why'd you copy that?" Like, oh, yeah, okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Once you do the amazing thing, it's hard to do it twice.
Yeah. Well, amazing and also flawed.
Yeah.
Right? Where not only people think it's amazing, there are also people who are like, and I hate the ending, or I hate this character, or I hate that character, and it's like, that's just what it ended up being.
But I mean, if you want to talk about the deep flaws of the characters in the experience that they're having, the fact that the series itself has flaws is, it works hand in hand, where you'd be like, I hate that ending, be like, yeah, and guess what? That show's kind of really hateful about a lot of stuff. So welcome to how this is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely.
Maybe they made this purposely just to drive you nuts. Because I'm pretty sure it's to drive us all nuts.
A lot of people
slow
nuts.
clap.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then the whole thing about Idion and all. Yeah, it's just boy, many layers.
Space, Laname, Idion.
You got to the end of Idion, right?
I have not gotten to the end.
Okay, I was wondering.
That's one where it's like, I don't even know how far I've gotten. I think I've gotten to like the second or third time that they've combined the Idion to get it working, and then the power grid is in the right stable format for them to do something, and then it falls out of alignment. Oh no, what do we do?
Jump forward. At least watch the last couple episodes. Because
wow, jump that far forward. Okay.
Full disclosure, the rest of the show is running away, run away.
Yeah.
For like 45 episodes. It just that is kind of the plot. Stuff happens, and there's stuff, but it's the same basic plot. But it is worth seeing the note that show ends on. It's just like, wow, they really did that. Okay, that's what they did. And then I don't know that I would ever recommend anyone watch the two films because they are so harrowing. The second one particularly, because it is kind of traumatizing, the final movie. But again, it is like it's Death and Rebirth and End of Evangelion. It is those two films basically a decade earlier, so it's interesting. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jay. Eva is a meme on its own.
Yes.
Yeah.
It has been meme fuel from the day the internet rose.
Yep. Absolutely.
There we go.
And speaking of sort of shonen romance.
Showman romance.
Showman romance.
Wow. That's
I'm sure that's a tag on fanfiction.net as well.
No joke.
A few years later, we got the premiere of Naruto. The original Naruto anime premiered back, guess what? 19 years ago. Back in Japan. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Wow.
And started off that whole thing. We talked about how people were like, oh boy, Naruto's going to end. It's going to go away. No. No. Not how it works.
And, time dilation being what it is, it's like, 2002? That's not that long ago.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, it is. Oh, it's back in the mists of time now.
Yep, it very much is. I remember, and also to give you all a sense, Naruto was one of the signs of the apocalypse. Naruto was one of the indications that anime was going to die. The anime was doomed because all of these young people were getting into anime, and all these teenagers were showing up at anime conventions and running around in Naruto outfits, and they weren't true anime fans. This was just destroying the fandom. Yeah, that was a thing.
So what was the one that destroyed anime after Naruto? Isekais, I think that's still current. I think that's destroying anime. Isekais.
Just before this was Pokemon. So Pokemon was the one before Naruto. After Naruto, because Pokemon came out in like 99 or something like that. 98, 99, I think, in America.
Did One Piece come out?
Yeah, but One Piece never really destroyed fandom. Like people weren't worried about One Piece, having a negative impact. Moe.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. I remember that discussion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So,
Moe is destroying anime.
Mm-hmm. And that was early 2000s.
Okay.
So timeline all worked out.
It's amazing the anime apocalypses that we've survived.
I know. Can you imagine?
How resilient is this industry?
It's crazy. And then only 1 year later, we got the premiere of the original Full Metal Alchemist.
Wow.
Yeah, which hit hard in Japan and America. One of the sort of more unusual.
Thank goodness for Toonami or was it Toonami?
I think so.
Yeah.
This was the point at which, so up until this point, Macross comes over or comes out in Japan, and we have to wait 3 years for it to come out.
Yeah.
And then we get very different experiences. Now we get, FMA comes out in Japan, hit, comes out in America, hit. And we start feeling that sort of synchronicity between the different fandoms. Obviously not exactly the same, but it starts feeling like we're all otaku, all over the world, which is rather lovely.
Back, once Crunchyroll went legit.
Yeah.
Back in the early days of their sort of high seas shenanigans. But once they went legit, it's like you started seeing that. Gosh, when would that have been? Like 2009, 2010. They went legit, somewhere in there. Yeah. That you then started seeing the hook line coming up 1 hour after premiere.
Yes.
And it's just like, wow. 3 years to Macross, and then in that time period, it was a year or 2 years or 3 years to get it over here to an hour after broadcast. Yeah. You've got that episode. It's subtitled and available for you to watch. Yeah. So somebody has just watched it at 2 a.m. in Japan. You're not going to be awake necessarily at whatever time that is an hour later in America. But you know what?
You are if you're a true fan.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm not a true fan. I'm a true sleeper.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? It's like now you're talking about synchronicity. You could have a real-time conversation with somebody on the other side of the planet about something that just aired on their TV within an hour and that you can share in the glow of that moment in real time. Versus the Japanese girl I dated in high school. I was talking about Macross, and to her... that was like, why are you talking about something that's was 5 years ago?
That's my parents' anime.
Yeah, I mean, but that was the experience where it's like you ran into people who had seen this stuff in Japan, and it's just like, oh, this is the latest, coolest thing in America. And they're like, you guys, people are so behind. What's wrong with you?
Exactly.
They're like, sorry, the VHS train didn't get here until just recently.
I'm just looking this up, see if I can find, see here, wow, so, Fullmetal Alchemist TV series came out October 2003, where was that, it debuted on Adult Swim in November of 2004, so just a year later, that came out over here.
Yeah, and it's like the time is just... shrunk down so much. Sure, what a glorious time to be alive. Despite the next coming isekai apocalypse.
Right, exactly, yes. That's the question. Isekai hasn't killed anime yet. What's going to be the next thing? What's going to doom anime next?
Will it loop back around?
Oh, it might be. Too many young kids.
Shonens and killing anime.
Sports anime. That's what's going to kill anime.
Yeah, sports anime. Rhythm dance anime is killing the anime industry.
Killing the anime industry, yeah.
Free, destroyed anime. You're Ice just destroyed anime.
Oh, boy. And by the way, you're exactly right. Crunchyroll started doing... got its first deal with TV Tokyo in 2009. After starting in 2006 as a, to quote Wikipedia, for-profit video uploading and streaming site that specialized in hosting East Asian video content. AKA pirate site.
High seas adventurer.
Yes, exactly. Of dubious distinction. Yes. Oh, man.
Which, how that, they were on the App Store. At a time when iPhones, smartphone thing was still in its infancy. And they somehow convinced Apple to get on the App Store. Yep. When they weren't doing anything legitimate. Which is a testament to the fact that Apple was accepting anybody at that time.
Yeah. It was
You're just a scam site to steal people's credit cards? Sure, just join the App Store. We just need content on the App Store.
I thought I had sitting around here, and I do not. Maybe in the other room. The one VHS anime I saw must be in the other room. But yeah, Jay is saying, yeah, you're right, Jay. Evangelion. That's what's gonna be. That's what's gonna destroy anime. That's anime is doomed to Evangelion. But yeah, absolutely, anime on VHS. That was how I first started watching anime.
Oh yeah, it was the only choice.
Yeah, going out and grabbing those tapes. Dub or sub.
Galaxy Express $9.99, the original Gundam, first 2 episodes of Gundam. I have the horrible. Do you remember Love when they edited it and butchered it?
Oh,
it's called
wow.
Clash of the Bionoids.
Okay.
It's terrible. And I bought it. I was heading to Hawaii to get my dive license, and I bought it in the airport LAX because it was at the airport bookstore VHS cassette. I was just like, I don't know what this is. I don't know why it is, but there's Clash of the Bionoids. I'm buying this. And it was Do You Remember Love entirely re-edited.
Huh. Interesting.
Oh, it was awful. I mean, they took out the Min-May and the zero-G shower.
Oh, cool.
But they also like edited other stuff out for like time, where it was just like, what are you doing? Why did you do this?
Yeah. Well, Minna wasn't in the shower in the movie, was she?
When
That
they
was another
first,
TV show.
no, I think they're the tuna head. When they're making tuna head soup, when they first end up zipped into space, I think.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, they have that same scene in the series, but she's not naked. It's in Do You Remember
Oh, she
Love?
is.
Is she? Oh,
Yeah, she is.
Edited out
In
the
original
Robotech
Macross.
version.
Yes, she was.
Yeah, the original, the Robotech version, she was not.
Yeah, you're correct. Yes.
But in Do You Remember Love, that she's floating in space. And
She is
like,
very much in the.
Yeah, you're like, oh boy, isn't she like 15, 14 or something? Like, oh, jeez. Yeah.
Yep.
My goodness.
Yep. We've gotten
and
used to that now.
Yeah, and that was edited out entirely
Of course,
in Clash of the Bionoids. It was,
Of course, yeah.
but yes, VHS, the only way we could share.
Absolutely. Yeah. Suncoast. A significant percentage of my anime collection is from Suncoast Video. Jay. Yes, absolutely, because they carried it. They were the only store that carried a significant percentage of anime. And so that's where I had to get. And there was one right down the street from where I worked, in a mall. So I would, on my lunch hour, about once a week, drive down there, walk around the mall, go to Suncoast, and of course, several of the staff there were anime fans.
Naturally.
So we would chat anime some, and that was where I got a lot of anime. Kino's Journey. I remember Lane. I got there. Battle Athlete's Victory. I can see them on the shelves, because you would get, if you were a member of their club, the Suncoast Movie Club, you get discounts the more stuff you bought. So if you bought $100 worth of DVDs, you would get like $15 off your next $100 worth of DVDs, or VHS or whatever.
Right.
And so I would rack those up. There was one point where I got a $35 off coupon to give you an idea of how much anime I was buying.
Dang.
Yeah. Because
the storage locker out back was full.
I do own 1,000 anime discs. Like I do have a collection. So
God.
Yeah. But again, that was the only way to get it. You just had to go there and get them disc by disc. And that was back, especially with disc. That was back when they were individuals. They had no box sets.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the VHS days. VHS was interesting too because with the VHS days, they did try to kind of standardize. So, if you were getting all of Ranma, they would all be like the same color, and they all kind of you could like put it on a shelf. They would all look similar. I remember the Lotus War VHS set, which I ended up selling. They all made a picture on the spines.
Oh, okay.
That was cool. So all of the different tapes all came together as one picture. That was fun. But yeah.
Yeah, geez, I can't remember the first time I rented any. I think I re-rented Akira, like somewhere in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then I literally just had memories of being like, I love anime, and not watching it literally until streaming services started.
Wow. Yeah.
It's like Netflix had the original Macross, so like it was right before I got the Crunchy app. So like 2004, 2005, I got the Netflix discs of Macross.
Oh, nice. Yep.
And then I got like JLA, and I got some other, sort of random kind of stuff. And it's like I finished the Macross of the original Macross, and I'm like, wow, that's so different than Robotech. What I remember, that translation is they really edited a lot out for Robotech. So then I started, then I got Robotech again through Netflix. I was like, oh, okay, this is, all right. And then, and it's like, so the early 2000s reintroduced me, and then here
Nice. Yeah. That's how I watched Escaflowne, was through Netflix on DVD things, because the box set was so hard to find.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, I guess the discs. I was like, okay, this is a thing I can get that I'm interested in, but I'm not willing to put the money down on.
Right.
And it's like, oh, this opens up a whole new world of anime.
Yeah, Netflix helped to test drive a lot of stuff that you wouldn't necessarily have until you got a chance to see what it was. Be like, oh, I got you here.
Well, and I remember them saying that, I forget if it was anime specifically or like sci-fi and fantasy in general, that helped them tweak their algorithms. Because so many of their original algorithms were based on the big popular like Hollywood blockbusters.
Yes.
And they needed to eventually optimize for like the long tail of this stuff that had an audience but not a huge amount, to adjust quantity and availability and so forth.
Yeah.
So they actually looked at a lot of those more niche titles to help figure out all those algorithms to stay profitable. So
Yeah, some of their anime selection for a long time was spotty.
yeah,
Best. And their older foreign films were terrible. Like trying to find like Europa or Deutschland bleibt Mutter. So, like some of these interesting, like some of the older Fellini films and stuff, they just didn't have them. It's like
exactly.
they'd have like a few representatives of it. If you wanted to watch The Thin Man, you could watch The Thin Man, the very first Thin Man.
Ah, right.
But you couldn't watch they didn't have the rest of it.
Like a video store. You go into a video store and it's like, well, it's whatever we happen to have on stock today. And it's like,
Yeah, and it's like that was a really interesting time, because I saw Shikabane Hime series through Netflix.
Wow.
I have never seen anybody ever discuss that show ever anywhere. Nobody has ever heard of it. Nobody's ever that I know has ever really watched it. And I loved that. I watched it twice within like a week.
Wow.
The entire series. It was just like every minute I had, I was watching that show. And it's like, that's because Netflix had it, and obviously it was not super, super popular, so they were able to acquire it. And it's just like, they've come a long way.
Yep. That was a cool first episode, by the way.
Yeah. Shikabane Hime?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I cried at the end of that show.
I never got to the end, but
my goodness. It was an emotional roller coaster by the time you got to the end.
Okay. Oh, good to know.
It was, it was well worth the trip.
Okay. I may have to go back and watch it.
Yeah.
One of the late Gynax entries.
Really?
Yeah. They assisted. They worked on it. It wasn't a Gynax anime.
Right.
But they were involved in production.
Oh, that's interesting.
Feel and Gynax partnered together to adapt the series, according to Wikipedia, back in 2008.
Yeah.
So it's Gynax was definitely not what they were back in the EVA days.
Yeah, but for quality of animation and for quality of storyline, they did a really good job of it. So
cool. Yeah, one of those is kind of lost titles.
Yeah.
You remember when it came out and folks were like, Gynax is doing a thing. Let's, yeah. And then it's like crickets.
Yeah,
weird.
Nothing. Yeah. But again, I think that's why Netflix had the whole series.
Yep.
It wasn't a hot property that people were demanding they couldn't get their hands on. It's like that was the point in time where they're like, content, just shovel some content in here, just so people will keep getting discs, and that we're gonna try we'll put some very limited stuff on streaming because we don't know how that's gonna work.
Right. Yeah.
Let's kick streaming off as Flickster. That'll work so well. No, it was a disaster.
People forget Flickster.
Yeah.
People forget that Netflix tried things that did not work.
Yeah. But, kudos to them.
Oh, yeah?
Look at them now. You know what I mean? That could have been nail in the coffin moment.
Right? Yeah. Absolutely.
But they dared to try.
Well,
and Blockbuster.
Yeah.
Does anybody remember that?
I mean,
they dared not to try.
Lest we forget, when they moved to streaming, everyone was like, you're an idiot. Like, there's no way you can make streaming work. Like, that is just impossible technologically. Like, even if you could, you can't make money off of it. It's just no. This is not going to work. You are really good at this DVD thing. Focus on that, and see where they are now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the only misstep in that was trying to launch a separate service for a separate price, and not make it a part of your core service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know, it's like that was the stupid move. The streaming was not dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
So,
Oh wow, that's cool, man. The Blue Seed box set, which is just all 13 VHS volumes stacked together.
Wow.
Yep, that was the thing that happened as well. Ooh, white VHSs. Remember the when the tapes would sometimes be a different color? They weren't just black.
Yeah.
That was neat. That was really fun.
Orange tapes, red tapes. Yeah.
Yep.
Any gimmick to get you to buy the thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Whatever it works.
Look, it's a purple cassette of Barney. Oh my! Put it down.
Burn it.
I love you. You love me. Ah!
I did not grow up with Barney. I should point out, I have a very different experience with Barney than a lot of people did. Barney was a thing of its time, that is horrifying from a historical perspective. But you know,
it's really interesting to watch people though go back and take pieces of Barney with the kids scenes and just rip them apart, being like, "Look at this kid's face. What's going on with this situation here? Why is Barney coming in and they look like they're all drunk?" You know, like,
did you ever? So we talked about The Critic before, the animated series. They had the French version of Barney. He bursts in through and says, "Bonjour, kids. I must sit down and smoke now."
I've got Critic on DVD. I should go back and see if I can find that.
Kids are like, "What are we going to do today?" "It doesn't matter. Life is pointless." You know?
We're going to read some Proust. Oh, great. Here we go.
The Critic was pretty brilliant. I still miss that show sometimes, but it is, like you say, it's a DVD.
Yeah, it was. I think it was a little smart for its time.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, people weren't up for that sort of thing at the moment. Speaking of, there's a how do we go with this? There was a Seattle-based sketch comedy show called Almost Live. And I was watching some episodes recently, and they did one of those things where all you have to hear is the title, and you know, you're like, okay, I know exactly what it's going to be like. I don't know what it's going to look like, but you know, I get kind of the writer's room joke.
Right.
They cut to and now, ladies and gentlemen, David Lynch's funniest home videos.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
And you can just imagine how weird that is and how bizarre.
Yeah. Good Lord.
It's that's the kind of thing you got.
Although, thank you, David Lynch, because that's how I found Chris Isaac. Because Chris Isaac did music for some David Lynch thing. I can't remember what it was. He did a song when I heard it. I was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. And ended up like listening to more Chris Isaac.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Wild Orchids?
Let's see here.
It wasn't Wild. That wasn't David Lynch. Was it Wild Orchids?
Let me see here. I'm looking it up now. His career. He worked on Wild at Heart. I am not seeing anything more, but it is likely a thing.
I was gonna say, I can't remember what it was.
Yeah. He was in the Twin Peaks movie. Yeah, don't know what else. Twin Peaks is an experience. Like people don't realize
that is
how Twin Peaks is worth watching. It is not just a cheesy '80s TV show. It's iconic.
It's referenced in homage kind of ways in a lot of different stuff over the years, where it's
absolutely
like, wow, how many people watch this show?
It was a big deal. I mean, he was huge. Well, it was back when Lynch was known as a film director, and film people did not do television.
Yeah.
And so just that pedigree kind of go, ooh, let's see what happens. And something happened. Oh,
It was a thing.
it was absolutely a thing. There are definitely scenes from that from that TV show I will never forget. You know, Bob crawling over the couch.
But that's David Lynch.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Mhm.
You're actually getting that's him. Welcome to his mind.
Exactly.
Which is why the home videos is just like, wow.
Exactly. Yeah.
Funniest bloopers. Funny?
Yeah.
What do you find funny?
Oh dear.
Funny is you're like sitting in the corner going, or funny like haha funny.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Because
no.
of Schadenfreude, some people will laugh at the people who are laughing insanely. Good to know.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Cool. Well, we're not all here tonight, so we'll just have to do an echoey version, because I do want to know.
What did we learn on the show tonight, Brent?
The show tonight, Brent.
For two people, not
All right.
not too bad, not too bad.
I'll have to get one of those little.
There we are. Yes.
Test that
Perfect. Because that needs to sound better.
Can we do an F sharp flat? What? What are you talking about?
F sort of sharp. Is there an F dull? I prefer
An F dull.
like-
Can we do an F dull? I'm looking for an L high. What? Is it L? No. What?
Sounds like a David Lynch thing.
Okay.
Yes. I have learned tonight. What the hell have I learned? I have no idea.
Several things. That there was not a lot of news this week.
Yes, that is very much what I learned. I'm like, jeez, struggling here. But I've learned that we can still pull something out of that, regardless,
Yeah.
and talk about things for several hours. So that's cool. Always enjoy doing that.
I was really curious about the Blackrock Shooter.
Yeah.
Like, just in saying that, it's like, oh, it was a picture, and then there's Hatsune Miku, and then there's all these other things that happen. It's like, it was a what? It was a picture?
Yeah. Just
Like,
a drawing on Pixiv, which
and that
you know,
launched
huge.
Blackrock Shooter?
Yep.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
wow. Okay. Any way that you can get into doing the thing that you're doing, awesome. That's great. It's just it's interesting, that humble beginning to the Blackrock Shooter franchise. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm
Yeah.
gonna go.
So strange.
I also learned that Hatsune Miku is, I'm going to have to watch more of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Check out more of her stuff.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm sure the original Blackrock Shooter, Miku video is on YouTube, so folks will
Oh, yeah, no
check
doubt.
that out.
I
It's
still
gorgeous.
have to see her kabuki.
You have to what?
I still have to see her kabuki.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because the paid watching window period has closed and done at the end of September. It's like,
Okay.
So I need to find that somewhere.
Yeah.
What else did you learn, Brent?
I don't know. I don't know that I learned anything. It was one of those nights where just nothing. I learned Shikabane Hime is worth going back to. Corpse Princess.
Yeah.
So I might be doing that. Yeah. How about you?
No, again, certainly Blackrock Shooter. I learned. That Funimation and Crunchyroll are still that they're releasing things of the same franchise, Demon Slayer.
Yep.
And in like different ways, even though they're now owned by Sony, and they're not doing. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And just that End of Green Gables is just such an unexpectedly pleasant watch.
Yeah.
It really is. It's a nice. It would be a nice vacation watch.
Yes.
Without bright sun to like block out screen viewing, it would be something I would love to sit on like the porch overlooking the beach and just hearing the rush of water and just watch that on like a lazy afternoon.
Totally.
Be like, I could dig that.
sipping some lemonade, having some cookies or something.
Or being at Green Gables, looking up at the birch forest,
Right.
and sitting there on the porch,
Yep.
rocking back and forth, watching it.
In Hokkaido.
In Hokkaido. Which, by the way, Hokkaido milk candy. Oh yeah. I got that, I think, at Grand Asia in Raleigh. I got a bag of it, and man, you want to. I totally agree with the idea that's like Hokkaido milk is delicious. That candy is made with Hokkaido milk. Oh my goodness, a milk candy like that is delicious.
There we go.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Go Hokkaido.
Go Hokkaido. I also learned. I forgot, but I remember now. I also learned. It's so nice having a new oven.
Yes. Yes, it is. For your griddle, do you have one of those little venters that's like at the back side of the griddle so it pulls directly any griddle fumes?
No, I do not.
Okay.
There is like a vent in it, but it's kind of a generic vent on the back.
Okay.
So, yeah.
It's like, now mind you, this was a Viking range,
Yeah,
but the Viking gas range had a griddle in the middle, and then it had like, it wasn't a scoop, but it had like a little angled venter kind of thing, so that as you cooked, it would directly, so that it wouldn't rise to the hood, but it would directly pull it down and then vent it.
My parents have this amazing thing. They have like a convection range. So if you put a metal pan on top of it, essentially it's one of the magnetic things. Yeah. And there is a strip on the back. If you press a button, a fan thing like rises up out of the countertop.
Oh,
and
wow.
the fans kind of suck things in from that down into below. And then you press the button again and you
How 1950s House of the Future.
It's very much that. And like they it's one of those things where they my mom wanted like this type of oven, and so this type of range top. Looked around, they're like, yeah, if you get this, like this comes with it. Like, this is just what we build for this. Like, awesome, yes, I'll have that.
Damn.
It's very strange.
Now that's where you have to get the pan where it looks like it has a copper coil on the bottom because it does like its thing that way.
Yeah, I think so.
You can't just use like an average aluminum
that's the thing.
pan.
Is that you have to have specific things that work with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a bummer.
It's very much like the wireless charging for phones and stuff, where it's like there's a coil magnet thing inside, and the phone has to be designed to have that coil to match with the coil in the wireless charger, so that you get the.
So I take that back. This is not exactly that. You need certain kinds of pan, but you don't need like just that coil.
Okay.
So
can you use a standard aluminum?
You can't use like an
aluminum pan.
You need like a heavy saucepan, kind of like a metal pan. So copper doesn't work. Other stuff just doesn't work. But just certain kinds of like heavy metal pans work.
And I'm gonna guess like a Le Creuset enameled
skillet
will
that
not
work.
work.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
would a cast iron skillet work?
I think it works, but you can't because that will scratch the surface.
Oh shit.
So that was one of the things.
Sorry, I did this to you. Shoot. What's past 11?
Darn it.
Dang.
Darn it. Best root beer you can buy. That's a great question. I am not a big anyways, asking what's the best root beer you can buy?
I've had IBC root beer plenty of times.
There's a local, fairly local root beer around here, and I'm forgetting the name of it. I'm going to do the silly thing and type in
Virginia
my state root beer.
State root beer.
See here.
Oh wait a minute! This is the perfect opportunity for me to plug Barks root beer. Buy lots of Barks root beer. It's a Coca-Cola product. Buy it. Buy more. Which that said, Barks is nice, but Dominion root beer, like literally manufactured Eastern Virginia. Or just in Virginia.
In Virginia. Let me just check actually, because the page I went to was like Total Wines article. This or page for it. Let me see.
Manufactured in Arlington.
Yeah, could be. That is not very So, Heathwick. I may be wrong. According to this, Dominion root beer grew out of original authentic American recipes found at the Library of Congress.
Oh, wow.
Let's see here. But I am not seeing any more details about the company that makes it, so I am not sure. That doesn't look okay. Yeah, no, that's not helpful. But yeah, I would say Dominion root beer is my favorite.
I think Colonial Williamsburg has a brewery somewhere down coastal wise that does a root beer and like ginger ale and stuff. So, but
There we go.
I don't know who. It's got the slapped on Colonial Williamsburg
Yeah.
label, but no idea who the brewer is.
Yep. Oh, is this the one where they had to move it around? It was originally in Ashburn. Yeah, that's the. I think that was the thing. Originally out of Ashburn, I think they have moved like out of state for like their actual brewing, but they're still kind of based in the area. Like it's like Maryland or something.
The best Virginia brewed root beer, straight from Saskatchewan.
Right, exactly.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, their like offices and stuff are in Delaware, actually. But yes.
Okay, is that their offices for service?
I
Because
don't
they
know.
were
I
incorporated
don't
in
know.
Delaware?
I don't know.
I would almost think so because Delaware is the most incorporation state friendly state that there is. So almost everybody has a quote unquote office.
Yeah, it
So
looks
that
like
they
they
have an
are.
office.
It looks like their address is Delaware. It looks like they're in Delaware now.
Okay.
So it's not brewed in Virginia, but roots, bonds, back to Virginia. What I'd say.
It's brewed in the Mid-Atlantic region.
Yes.
Ah. So it can claim native status to any of the states in the Mid-Atlantic region.
Sure. Exactly. Yes. But the other thing about root beer is drink what you like.
Yeah.
Try different things. See what you prefer. There is a certain national root beer brand that I will not name that I do not like because of it has a chemically taste to me. But that's just who I am. What can I
Do they
say?
happen to have a chain of restaurants, or they used to?
It's a 4-letter name. That's all I know. But it's just saying.
Oh, I was thinking one that's a couple of letters with an ampersand in between. But
nope.
I mean, root beer, other than being spicier or not spicier, really, it is honestly a little hard to screw root beer up.
True. Yeah.
You can make it a little more chemically, but it's like it should taste like root beer.
Yeah. This particular brand is one that to me just tastes like
Chemically.
Tastes like chemicals. Like I can't taste any root beer in it. So
Ugh.
that's just my taste. Yeah.
Say it's time to move on to birch beer.
There we go.
Good old Pennsylvania Dutch birch beer.
Yep. Or just maybe not sodas at all. Imagine that. Imagine that.
One could argue that soda is not exactly a healthy food, but as a
Possibly.
treat occasionally.
As an occasional treat, exactly. Just like McDonald's,
Exactly.
right? It's fast food. Not all the time,
Exactly.
but every so often.
Moderation is always
Moderation.
advisable
Yes.
in all things.
No more than one soft drink every hour. Moderation.
Yeah.
Moderation. Cool. All right, that'll do it for us for tonight. Thank you all so much.
Arigatou gozaimasu.
Always fun. Always a great time. Hope you all have a great rest of the week. We will be doing our seasonal anime watching party next week.
Woohoo! Yes,
weekend.
we will.
So we talk about all the new anime, at least episodes 1 of each of those, next week, as we dig in to all those and talk about them. I've heard some good things about this season, so fingers crossed.
I got a lot of hopes.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. All right, thank you all. Have a good one. Great week.
Arigatou, sayonara, oyasumi nasai.
Bye.
Bye bye.